Now, Britain's news channel.
How are you doing? A very good morning to you. 6 o'clock on the dot. Eamonn and Isabel here with your breakfast on GB News.
Yes, and here's what's leading the news this morning. Resignation watch as the political pressures piling up from both wings now of the Conservative Party over the government's newly signed treaty with Rwanda. Catherine Forster has the latest.
Yes, lots of arguments going on within the Conservative Party about the government's latest attempt to get people to Rwanda. £140 million already gone to that country. Will any migrants crossing the Channel follow? I'll bring you more shortly.
Meanwhile, at the COVID inquiry, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to defend his handling of the pandemic. It's a two-day grilling.
A show of royal unity at Buckingham Palace last night as Prince Harry's legal woes at the High Court continue again today.
Nigel Farage is a step closer to the jungle crown as he survives another elimination, and he celebrated with a little bit of a dance last night.
First it was his bottom, now it's his chest. I feel like I've seen the full Farage in
He's
the
just
jungle.
too sexy for a shirt. That's the whole thing. And on that subject,
too sexy for a shirt is the big question.
Well, I was going to dress a little more comfortably to do the little sport. Arsenal beat Luton in the last minute, and that means they go 5 points clear in the Premier League.
Well done to them.
Yes, well done to them. And also England's women. So they managed to beat Scotland 6-0, but in the last minute, Holland score against Belgium to win 4-0, which basically means that Team GB will not be in the Olympics. Does that make sense? I think so.
Yes, because you got us all interested in this yesterday, and I heard the results this morning and I was gutted.
One goal.
Yeah,
one goal.
Unbelievable.
And the forecast today is in the hands of Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning. Many of us will have woken up to some crisp winter scenes, but there's rain in the forecast by the end of the day for some of us. You can find out more with me a little bit later on.
Look forward to it, Annie. Thank you very much indeed. We look forward to hearing from you guys as well. Here's what you do. You email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. We will do our best to reflect that. You can tweet to the general public by and large at GB News.
So it's our top story this morning. The Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has signed a new treaty with Rwanda in a bid to curb the UK's growing illegal migration numbers.
Well, the government has pressed ahead with its Rwanda plans, despite a Supreme Court ruling only last month saying it was unlawful.
Well, James Cleverly said that the new treaty will now address all of those issues. However, he may have a tougher sell with some of his own colleagues.
The Daily Telegraph is reporting that Rishi Sunak faces up to 10 ministers quitting if he adopts a hardline approach and uses emergency legislation on Rwanda to circumvent the European Convention on Human Rights.
While last night, dozens of backbenchers from the European Research Group, the Common Sense Group and the New Conservatives set up a Brexit-style, what they called star chamber of legal experts to establish whether the new Rwanda treaty would facilitate flights to Rwanda.
So as all of this heats up, our GB News political correspondent Catherine Foster will explain what it all means. Catherine, good morning.
Yes, so Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, and Home Secretary James Cleverly trying to tread a really fine line here. We've seen lots of arguments going on, resignation threats from all the different wings of the Conservative Party. But the new Home Secretary James Cleverly speaking in Kigali yesterday, where they signed this new treaty with Rwanda, is sounding optimistic. Let's have a little look at what he had to say.
I see no reasons why there should be any more impairments to doing the right thing to break the business model of these people smuggling gangs and for the humane and professional treatment of refugees that Rwanda is offering.
Final.
So sounding optimistic there, but will it work? Let's have a little look at some of the details of this treaty. Pardon me. First of all, this is the crucial part. It gives a guarantee that people relocated to Rwanda will not be sent on to a third country, either their own home country where they came from, where they may be potentially at risk, or another country. There's one exception to that, which is the United Kingdom. Now, I think that's significant because that's a change. The whole point of Rwanda was if you were sent there, it was a one-way ticket. You wouldn't be coming back to the UK. So I think that might prove to be significant. Also, a new appeal body is being set up, British and Commonwealth judges within the Rwanda High Court to deal with exceptional cases. And then the other point, an independent monitoring committee, their work is going to be enhanced. UK experts will be going out to help process asylum claims. So this is one part of the government's attempt to get flights going after the Supreme Court blocked them. The other part is going to be legislation which we're expecting to be brought before Parliament in the coming days. So let's see what happens. But I think worth bearing in mind that £140 million has already been given to Rwanda to date. We've sent 3 different Home Secretaries and not a single illegal migrant. And the previous Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, said it was her dream to see a flight of people take off to Rwanda. Will it ever become a reality? Back to you, Eamonn and Isabel.
Well, on the question of people that we don't want in this country, to Australia, where they want everybody. And now they're trying to pinch builders. Builders are being offered £6,000 to ditch Britain for sun-kissed Australia. The Aussies have already hired thousands of British doctors, nurses, police officers and brought them to their shores. And now the Western Australian Minister for Planning is heading to Britain this week to recruit builders. And you get £6,000 for going.
There'll be nobody left here.
But isn't it strange? We don't want anybody and they want everybody. They see the value of people with skills and all that sort of thing. COVID inquiry, let's talk about that.
Yes, well, Boris Johnson is expected to admit today that he made mistakes during the pandemic. He's appearing before the COVID inquiry.
Well, the former Prime Minister will argue his government got the big decisions right. He always says that, doesn't he? We got the big decisions right. With the Times claiming he will also say he helped save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives by preventing the NHS from being overwhelmed.
Well, let's speak to the political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield. He'll be trying to convince us then on those big decisions, but there will be serious questions, not least about where he was in those 10 days before lockdown was called and about some of the comments he made about letting the bodies pile up.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there'll be all sorts of questions being fired at him. I mean, thus far, he's come in for quite a lot of criticism from a lot of the other witnesses to the inquiry, not least Dominic Cummings. Obviously, his former top advisor has been very critical of Boris Johnson's handling of the early days of the pandemic. The scientists as well, Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance, they have been pretty critical of his understanding of the severity of the pandemic in those early days. So, yeah, he's going to have to come out fighting to try to put across his side of the argument, because there's no doubt that his already pretty damaged reputation has come in for a bit of a battering so far in the inquiry.
It should be interesting, given, you know, the barrister will go through line by line, painstakingly, in a way that will really sort of turn the screw, if you like, on the former Prime Minister. You know, it's very difficult to pin him down sometimes. I think that's fair to say. It's one of his notorious traits. But this barrister will absolutely be, you know, putting him on the spot over the next couple of days.
Absolutely, he's going to have to be right across the detail of his evidence, which is not something that he's noted for. He's been holed up with his lawyers for the last few weeks, going over in painstaking detail exactly what happened at that time. Now, we know that the initial meetings of the government's Emergency Cobra Committee were chaired by Matt Hancock rather than Boris Johnson. I remember at the time there was an awful lot of questions as to why Boris Johnson didn't choose to chair those meetings himself. I'm sure he'll be asked exactly to explain his thought process there. There have been allegations that he was more interested in finishing a biography of William Shakespeare that he was writing, which I think he will deny today. He's also been accused of trying to play down the severity of the pandemic, suggesting it would all turn out okay. It wouldn't be as bad as swine flu. I'm sure he will hit back quite hard on that. But yeah, I think he's going to have his work cut out to try and convince people that he was taking it as seriously as he could have done. And as you say, though, he will apologise, though, for the mistakes which were made on his watch.
How much sympathy will he glean, Kevin, by this claim he repeats over and over ad infinitum? I got the big decisions right.
Well, the thing about Boris Johnson is, you know, no one is really lukewarm on him. People either think he's great or think he's awful. So I think it's going to be difficult for him to change people's minds. I mean, there's no doubt that the vaccine programme was a tick in the Boris Johnson box. I think, you know, he was certainly very early to the party on that one. Pardon the pun on parties, but you know, the UK's vaccine programme was very good, and I think there's no question that did save an awful lot of lives. However, that was quite far into the pandemic. I think this particular inquiry at the moment is going to be focusing on those early decisions. What did he do when the stories first came out of China about this new virus, and what measures did he take, as I say, February, March time in 2020 to get the UK prepared for what was to come. And of course, there's a story in the Times this morning that WhatsApp messages, crucial WhatsApp messages from that period that were on his phone have been unable to be retrieved. So unfortunately, that particular line of evidence won't be revealed to the inquiry.
OK, Kevin, appreciate it. Thank you. We'll speak again later in the programme, Kevin, but for the moment, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. In other news this morning, the SNP is in court today to prevent the release of redacted evidence from an investigation into Nicola Sturgeon's conduct whilst Alex Salmond was being probed for sexual misconduct in 2018. This is the Hamilton report. It concluded that Miss Sturgeon had not broken ministerial codes, but a Freedom of Information request has yet to expose the contents of written evidence submitted. Well, our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire gets us up to speed on the story so far.
More than 5 years after the Scottish Government opened an investigation into Nicola Sturgeon's conduct during the Alex Salmond sexual assault probe, SNP ministers are still in court, attempting to block the full report from seeing the light of day. The Hamilton report, written by independent advisor and former Irish prosecutor James Hamilton, was released heavily redacted on March 22nd, 2021, the day before Mr Salmond was found not guilty of 12 charges of attempted rape, sexual assault and indecent assault at the High Court in Edinburgh. At the heart of the report was whether Miss Sturgeon misled MSPs over when she first became aware of allegations towards her mentor.
Do you understand the frustration of the committee? Do you understand that it looks as if the government doesn't want to give us critical information?
I think the government has fully cooperated with the committee, and I think it has provided information in a proper way.
3 weeks into Mr Salmond's conduct investigation, Nicola Sturgeon met with his Chief of Staff before speaking to her predecessor on the phone 3 times between April and July 2018. Despite neglecting to record these interactions and being accused of sharing an incomplete narrative of events, the Hamilton report ultimately concluded that Nicola Sturgeon had not broken the code. But it caused such a stir that Nicola Sturgeon survived a vote of no confidence that same week, brought on by then Scottish Conservative leader Ruth Davidson.
Yesterday, we publicly accepted the Hamilton report. For days, others have rejected the committees. And we note that Hamilton was crystal clear that the basis of this vote of no confidence, whether the First Minister misled this Parliament or not, is a decision for this Parliament and not for him.
Since its findings were published, the SNP has rejected freedom of information requests, arguing it does not hold the requested evidence, but the investigation took place under ministerial oversight. The Information Commissioner believes that the evidence is subject to right-to-know legislation, and the Scottish Government has no grounds to dismiss related FOI applications. The SNP has already spent thousands to conceal the contents of this report, and if they want to keep it that way, they must prove that the Commissioner has incorrectly applied the law. If the court chooses to back the Commissioner, detractors will be one step closer to uncovering any malfeasance from Nicola Sturgeon during this time. Tony Maguire, GB News, Edinburgh.
The time's creeping up to 6:15. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Here's a reminder of the top stories on this Wednesday morning.
And we're on resignation watch this morning. The political pressures piling up from both wings of the Conservative Party over the government's newly signed treaty with Rwanda.
A 28-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following the stabbing of a 29-year-old woman in Aberfan in South Wales yesterday.
Well, we can cross to Aberfan and speak to our reporter Jack Carson. Jack, are you able to give us any update on this really shocking incident?
Yeah, of course, it was a quite horrific incident yesterday morning here in Aberfan. You can see behind me that the police cordon is still in place at the scene here, where, of course, that 28-year-old man is still in police custody. Now, police confirmed yesterday in a press conference with Chief Inspector Rob Miles that the man was known to the victim and that this was a targeted attack. They say that the woman in question, a 29-year-old believed to be pregnant woman from local witness reports here, remains in hospitals with injuries which the police believe at this point are not life-threatening. But of course, yesterday when that incident happened, South Wales Police ordered 6 schools in this area to lock down. Now, they confirmed yesterday that schools today will be able to reopen as normal, which will certainly be positive news for parents. They had come out of lockdown around between 3 and 4 o'clock yesterday at the end of the school day. Police also confirming yesterday at 10 to 4, that's when that man was arrested in Merthyr, nearby Merthyr, which is only a couple of miles away. So police confirming that this suspect that they arrested yesterday hadn't got too far, but it ought to be much better news and reassurance for the community that that man is in police custody and will start to be questioned by South Wales Police.
Thank you very much indeed. Junior doctors in England are set to stage the longest strike in NHS history.
This is after talks on an improved pay deal with the government have broken down. Ministers and the British Medical Association have been locked in negotiations for 5 weeks now, trying to find a resolution to the dispute. The first walkouts are due to start across England from 7 a.m. on the 20th of December.
The King was joined by the Queen, Prince William and Kate at a dazzling Buckingham Palace reception last night, which heralds the start of the festive period for the royals. The annual gathering welcomes over 500 members of the diplomatic corps in the staterooms at Buckingham Palace.
Well, this comes as Prince Harry's court proceedings over his UK security arrangements continue in the High Court later today.
If you're heading off to work this morning, prepare for commuter chaos. Some of the busiest rail routes in the country have limited service or no trains at all. Members of the ASLEF Union at South Western Railway, Southern, South Eastern, Gatwick Express and the Isle of Wight's Island Line will walk out for 24 hours in the latest stoppages. Even if you're not on the rail lines, you're affected by those train strikes, as we can testify, can we not, Isabel?
4 hours in the car together. As if we don't spend enough time together every day. We went to an event after the show. We left Leicester Square at 3:30. 4 hours it took me to get home. We just sat in gridlock, mainly in the capital and the arterial roads coming out of it. But So be warned if you're
London was a real mess.
Not funny.
Real mess yesterday.
Yeah.
And is it because London doesn't really have straight lines, straight roads? It's not like New York or somewhere.
There's just too many.
Everything's higgledy, and.
Why are these train strikes still going on?
It's a national disgrace that this hasn't been settled. You know, it's just you just have to take it as normal now that there will be a train strike. You know, I know people this week who've been affected already with their services cancelled coming into London, out of London, around London. We hear the Isle of Wight as well. But I mean, there's obviously a problem, and there's a problem that needs to be addressed, and I suspect a lot of it's got to do with people voting for themselves out of jobs. You know, they are trying to reduce the amount of staff that work on the railways, so it's not just a question of pay, it's these conditions as well, and whether people will actually have a job.
But I have to say, there's one thing I hate, it's traffic. And it's the stop-start, and you start to get a bit car sick. We had the Christmas tunes on, and it was like a never-ending journey.
We flicked from different radio stations. And
Eamonn was just taking famous phone call after famous phone call. That was quite fun, I have to say. I work with you every day, so I'm desensitised to your celebrity, and I kind of just take it for granted that I'm sitting next to Eamonn Holmes. I sit in the car, and you're chatting to someone who's got someone playing for Chelsea tonight in the football team and her family, and then you've got your other mate who's a very well-known broadcaster, and it's quite a privilege to
Do you
hang
not
out
have
with.
any friends?
No, I don't have any major A-list friends, apart from you.
Yeah, apart from me.
But that was quite fun. And we had a lovely day, apart from that.
We had a lovely day.
We did.
We had a lovely day. Apart from that, that was longer than the lovely day we had.
Was it worth it? That's what your son asked me when we got home. Was it worth it? I wasn't sure.
Well, you had sausages for your tea, right? And I had a sort of beef pie and mashed potato, and and then I fell asleep.
Yeah, I went to bed, and then I got him in the car again this morning. So I feel like all I've done is
been in a car.
Yeah.
So how were your sausages?
Not cooked as well as I'd have liked.
Really?
No, I sound really spoiled. My very sweet mother stepped in because I was so late home, so she made supper for the kids, and I had some leftover sausages, but I like them burnt to a cinder, and hers are sort of, I don't know, you can't do al dente sausages.
Pork?
Underdone.
Pork or...
Yeah, pork.
Yeah, pork, yeah.
But no, I like them burnt.
OK.
So I'm
Burnt
grateful.
sausages.
I'm grateful.
Okay.
That's what I am.
Annie Shuttleworth, she's got the weather for you today. Enjoy.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a dry and bright day for many of us, but it still feels rather cold after the chilly start. But later on, we'll see some rain arriving in the west. Now, there's an ice warning in force still through the morning across northeastern areas of Scotland. And elsewhere, though, we'll see plenty of dry and clear weather through much of the day. Any freezing fog should slowly lift and clear further south and west, but the sunshine will start to turn a little bit hazier across western parts of the UK, and rain will arrive into Northern Ireland. Temperatures will start to rise, though, highs of 12 degrees in the Scilly Isles later, still feeling very cold in the east, however, despite the sunshine. And then that rain through tonight will push further east. We've got weather warnings in force for parts of Northern Ireland overnight, and then tomorrow morning into parts of the southwest of the UK. That could bring some hill snow to parts of the Pennines and Scotland for a time, but mostly we'll be seeing a lot of heavy rain. Temperatures as a result will slowly start to rise, so there's much less of a risk of a frost through tonight. And then through Thursday, the rain really does continue, so quite a damp, cloudy day, and with weather warnings in force through much of the day across parts of Scotland and these western areas. Many of us will see rain on and off throughout the day. There could be water lingering on the roads as well, so do take care if you're travelling throughout Thursday. Later on, though, in the west, we will see the sunshine return and temperatures rising into double digits for many of us. I'll see you later.
Temperatures rising in the jungle as well.
Yes.
Nigel Farage, his bed is bottom, now he's stripping off. Whatever next?
Too sexy for his shirt, you'll find out after this.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you. CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Last night in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, Nigel Farage, who has a strong association with this channel, survived another day in the jungle.
Just because he's so sexy. They only hire the sexy.
Is that right?
I don't know. Our reporter on the Gold Coast, Adam Cherry,
who's
sent
very
this
sexy.
report.
Good morning, guys. Good afternoon from the Gold Coast here in sunny Australia. The big news overnight is, yes, Nigel Farage has survived another day in the jungle. So the Vote Remain campaign lives on for yet another day. Of course, that's not the only big news coming out of last night. We have to talk about this, and we are going to show you the clip. If you haven't seen it already, brace yourselves. This is Nigel singing I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt in the Jungle Arms last night. Take a look at this if you dare.
I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love. Love's going to leave me.
We were also given the delight of Nigel Farage. I'm too sexy for my shirt.
Sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts. I do know the Fairbrass brothers that produced that hit. You know, I'm too sexy for my shirt. You've got to get your shirt off.
Vote for Nigel again tonight. Make sure you do. Hashtag Vote Remain. Back to you guys. Cheers.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. And we've got the letters page in the Telegraph newspaper today. It mentions Paul Coit today, right? Did you write this yourself?
I did write a few. I've been writing them for about a year. I've been sending things in about this.
To be fair, Bob from Bicester emailed in, an eagle-eyed viewer, and said, I've just been reading the Telegraph, because a lot of our viewers do read the Telegraph, and he's just spotted your name. So I ripped open the paper excitedly, and quite right, Brian Roebuck from Ulverston in Gloucestershire.
Go on, Brian, go on.
Is he related to you in any way?
Well, he will be now.
He's written a letter about excessive BBC salaries, saying the BBC should look at how much is paid to employees, especially Gary Lineker, who apparently earns 1.3 million. Paul Coit of GB News would be more than capable of replacing him, probably for a more realistic salary.
Well,
realistic means cheap.
It does mean cheap. It's exactly what it means.
You do it for 1.2.
Paul's obviously cheap. Get him. You could probably cut down the licence fee by a fortune by what they pay him.
I think you'd be excellent.
Match of the day is the one show that I really would want to do. People say, what would you like to do? I'd like to do Match of the Day.
You did every sport, didn't you? Every sport.
Oh, I did every sport, yeah. You're right, yeah.
And you were brilliant at every sport.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
You were.
No, but...
you were rubbish at darts. Couldn't do maths.
Well, you'd be surprised,
Come on, I don't want to be
Isabel.
blowing smoke up his bottom all day.
Well, the BBC hired me for 4 years on it. They didn't think I was rubbish.
Oh, now, come on, you're taking it personally. They're going, Eamonn, he needs 40. It's double 16?
I did find it a challenge initially. I did.
There you go. There's an admission.
What was the weirdest sport you had to do? Obviously, when I'm weird, I don't want to insult anybody, but...
No, they're not, not weird, but, you know, sedate bowling was a bit
Crown
sedate.
green bowls.
Yeah, Crown green, yeah.
Yeah, Potters in Norfolk as well?
I did pot black, you know. I did the last series of pot
now,
black.
that is a very impressive thing to do, is do pot black.
That was a good... That was amazing to be able to do that.
You know, I'm talking about this purely to avoid talking about Arsenal. You know that, don't you? That's the reason I'm just... It was... I mean, they were...
In fairness, Luton, I mean, they're enjoying... I hope their fans are enjoying the ride in the Premier League. But Kenilworth Road, they were there last night. They scored 3 goals against Arsenal, but it's not enough.
It's not. And the thing is, it was the same with Liverpool, and they scored right in the last minute as well when things were looking great. And it's just hanging on until the end. And we went right down to the last minute, and then Declan Rice rises like a salmon, heads the ball in, and then it's a 4-3 win for Arsenal. I'll tell you what was interesting is David Raya again, you know, the goalkeeper who... Yeah, he's replaced Aaron Ramsdale, and he's had a few clangers, but Arteta, old Captain Black, loves him, and he's sticking with him because I think he is a mystery. I think Raya. I think this is how he's managed to get away with it.
I was with Martin Kemp yesterday at this function where I was sitting beside him, and we both agree he is Captain Black.
Because he's an Arsenal fan, isn't he, Martin Kemp?
He is, yeah.
He's also a GBNews viewer.
Oh, is he
Because
really?
he watches us from his gym down the end of the garden.
Does he really?
Yeah.
What time does he start usually at the gym?
Well, presumably between 6 and 9:30.
Sorry, I was just a big Spandau Ballet fan.
I know, me too. I was trying not to fangirl.
And were you? Yeah. But also he has a mock documentary out, hasn't he? Him and his brother.
A mockumentary?
Him and Martin. A mockumentary, which was very funny. They did one before. This was Martin and Gary Kemp. And there's another one coming out for Christmas, which is like they play themselves, but like it's...
Very confusing.
It's very funny. It is. It's more confusing probably than the England women's game last night.
Man United have got Chelsea tonight in the league.
Yeah.
And all the papers are choking on today that a good few of them and Sky Sports have been banned
ESPN, Manchester Evening News.
from the news conference.
Yeah.
And what are they upset about?
Well, we probably would have been as well, because we were talking about this yesterday, the fact that word had got out. And the thing is, let's be honest, a lot of this stuff is not made up. Everybody has sources within clubs. Players like to speak. Families of players like to let things out. So there's always moles. So the word is that a lot of players that are very unhappy under Erik ten Hag. Now, Erik ten Hag was asked about this in the press conference yesterday because there were other, as you mentioned, media outlets that weren't there because they were banned for printing it. And I think if we can hear from what Erik had to say yesterday about this, Erik ten Hag at the press conference yesterday.
They should come to us first and not go around in our back printing articles. That's not the right thing. I think we have another relationship, and then they can, if they should give that to us beforehand, we have a normal and a professional discussion and debate about it.
So you're not happy at all. So they ban them. I don't think they should be doing that, though, should they?
I think people get their knickers in a twist very easily over things. Are you telling me every player in that Man United squad are behind their manager? I would doubt not. I would doubt that. Paul, see you again later, my friend.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed.
Right, with the time at 6:32, a reminder of our top stories this morning. Resignation watch as the political pressures piling up from both wings of the Conservative Party over the government's newly signed treaty with Rwanda.
Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to defend his handling of the pandemic during the COVID inquiry. A 2-day grilling begins today.
A show of royal unity at Buckingham Palace last night as Prince Harry's legal woes at the High Court continue again today. Right, stay with us. Still to come, we're asking who is your person of the year? We'll be making Time magazine shortlist, having a look at it and listening.
Well, why would he be there?
Well, quite.
Yeah, OK. Anyway, that's Taylor Swift. Anyway, the headline makers will tell you next.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got Nikki Hodgson and we've got Andy Jones, and they're going to talk about some of the stories making the news and grabbing the front pages today. Now, Nikki, first of all over those front pages is a picture of, well, the King and the Queen and the Duke and the Duchess of Wales.
Yes, well, it's on all the papers this morning. It's across the internet, all looking scrubbed up in their, their finery. Kate there wearing a glittering dress, as per usual. I mean, this is a kind of usual portrait we see from them at this time of year, isn't it, when they have this annual event? And you wouldn't know that there was anything troubling them.
No. Maybe troubling Prince Harry, though. He finds himself in court talking about his lack of protection, armed protection, in the UK.
Yeah.
It's funny, they keep him off the front page.
Yes, interestingly, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, I actually think their popularity is in the ascendant again. And I think it's a very tricky time for Harry, because he has completely lost favour with the British media. They really don't have anything positive or encouraging to say. And, he should have technically got sympathy from being in court and saying that his privacy's been breached and all the rest of it. But I just don't think anybody's bothered anymore.
Andy, have you any sympathy with Harry?
I used to be a little bit on the fence about the royals. And the more that the British royal family, the ones that have stayed, get attacked, the more defensive I am. I find my wife's American, and we go to America quite a lot, and they're naturally interested in the royal family. And I felt like before I'd be quite sort of, oh, yeah, a bit sort of eye roll about it. And now I'm passionately defending Charles. I'm passionately defending Kate and William. I'm amazed the words coming out of my mouth, not just on this show. And I feel really fervently proud of them. Again.
Why do you think?
Ridiculous era.
What do you put the change down to? Why do you think that is?
I felt like so much of the criticism, particularly on the Oprah show, and after that with the Prince Harry book, has been complete nonsense. Prince Meghan's concerns about that. She said that royal family had concerns about the skin tone of the baby. Harry then said that it was nonsense and it was just the racism was made up by the media, yeah, and all this sort of stuff. And I just think, I really appreciate, in an era where we've got so many politicians failing to do the job, I appreciate this sort of quiet, dependable service. I know that there's a lot of luxury and nicety with being in the royal family, and I'm sure they live a far greater life than I do, but I just see William and Kate going out and about doing their job. And we'll talk about him selling the big issue.
Well, let's do that, Nikki.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a perfect example, isn't it, of what Andy's describing. And he was yesterday filmed, and actually Kate was out and about as well, but he was really trying to drive home this ambition of his to try and end homelessness. What's the target? 2030 or something? He wants to see it.
Yeah, yes. And obviously we know that homelessness has been increasing dramatically in the past couple of years, and rough sleeping in particular because of COVID and the knock-on effect of that. Yeah, I mean, there's just a really gorgeous picture of him doing something that he's done for a long time, actually, which is support homeless people. He went out and joined a vendor called Dave Martin, who's a big issue seller. And, yeah, they went and sold the magazine together. He's a long-time friend of William. William spent a long time talking to him about what it is like on the streets and how he manages. And
I wonder what it would be like to walk out of the train station or your supermarket or whatever and see the big issue, and he walks up in front of you and he says, will you buy one?
Well,
you say, well, buy 5 or buy 6.
He's so distinctive as well, isn't he? Because I mean, I know that he's wearing, you know, kind of civvy clothes and his red hat, but you would know it was Prince William if you saw him.
Of course you would.
The voice is a giveaway as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder if he modifies his accent when he's selling it. Goes a bit estuary.
Yes.
What do you reckon?
A bit more working class, yes.
Have we got time for another royal story? Because this is about Maoris refusing to swear allegiance to the king, Andy. And this is a Maori MP has actually called the king a scab.
Yes, a bit of clever or not so clever, rather rude wordplay. So the opening of Parliament, they swear in all these new MPs. 3 new MPs of Te Peti Maori, apologies if that pronunciation is incorrect, pledged an allegiance to the king, which is traditional as a Commonwealth. However, the Maori word for, they said the Maori word for Charles, which again, apologies for my pronunciation, is Harari, but they said it in a way which made it sound like the Maori word for scab or skin rash. And you can see this rather excitable gentleman here doing what I assume is a sort of traditional dance I think he's got a traditional Maori hat on as well. And they said that this was deliberately provocative. The Maori Party themselves said they're there to be provocative, always provocative. And there they are provoking on your screens right now. Could you see a bit of a Jacob Rees-Mogg doing that in our Parliament?
No, he just goes to sleep.
He'd just have a big nap.
He just has a nap.
Gosh, well, there we go. Right. Oh, talking about Jacob Rees-Mogg, it's interesting. Channel 4, over Christmas, I noticed last night we're running a trailer for a Mogg Christmas.
A Mogg Christmas?
Yeah.
What about what it's like to be in the Mogg family at Christmas time?
No, Mogg's a cat.
Oh, sorry.
We were talking about Mogg
Jake
the cat. That's a regular. I've even got the Christmas episode edition.
Well, there's a Mogg special, and I thought it was
very nice.
I thought it was for Jacob Rees, but it's a Mogg Christmas. It's going to be called a Mogg Christmas. I think we should have a Mogg Christmas here.
Judith Kerr, isn't
on
it?
GBNews.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've got those books, my baby. Well, I'd quite like to see Jacob Rees-Mogg's Christmas because I presume it's extremely Victorian. Everybody goes to church very early on. Maybe they get one stocking and an orange and a lump of coal and then it's bad. That kind of vibe.
No opening presents until about 3 days later.
The nanny will prepare everything.
Nanny will prepare everything, exactly.
Where should we go? Do we want to talk about vapes, Andy? Because this is a proposal by Labour and they want to try and make them prescription only because they're viewed as a gateway drug, according to the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a copy of what's going on in Australia, where a similar thing's been happening there. It's prescription only and disposable vapes e-vapes are banned. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting is trying to lock down on what he calls a gateway drug. Now, in the park near me, sometimes I walk out earlier on in the morning and I see what I think are wonderful coloured flowers coming out of the grass. And then I get closer and then they're just these big, horrible plastic vapes that have been discarded, probably by kids. And they're in like watermelon flavour, strawberry flavour, apple flavour, and they're all called ridiculous names that attract children. And you do see, if you drive past the school, secondary school at a certain time of day, all the kids walking out puffing away with their, you know, ridiculous highlighter pen-coloured vapes.
What, Andy, I'm trying to imagine what a vape gives me if I was to take it. So I don't suddenly think, oh, fancy a bit of watermelon. I'll go and get a vape, you know, or oh, a lovely pineapple suck here or whatever. So what do they do? Do they make you feel light and airy or?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
What is the effect?
And it's the nicotine, isn't it, as well? They've got nicotine in them.
They've got nicotine
so the minute
in
you
them.
start smoking them, you want more of them, because it's a very addictive drug.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's really disturbing about this story is the fact that actually lots of the vapes on the market are also illegal vapes. There's millions of them coming in via Heathrow, and they contain, you know, terrible metals, awful chemicals. They're even more damaging than the ones that we are licensed to buy. And the danger is that young people, you know, if they're buying them off friends or casually acquiring them, it's the illegal ones they're getting. They're even worse for their health.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can see why West Streeting is going so big with this policy. It really is a potential health crisis waiting to happen in the next sort of 10, 20 years.
But I've had them after ill-advised nights in the pub, and I go for a run the next day, and I'm wheezing.
Really?
Like an asthmatic old cat. And I just feel like, what on earth is he doing to young lungs? But it is quite... what they like about it is you can blow like a big plume of smoke in the air and that bright colours, and it's something also a social anxiety thing to do with your hands.
Yes, that's the only bit I can understand, when you feel a bit awkward as a teenager and you're trying to fit in and feel good.
But why do they then dump their plastic things on the floor? I mean, why can't they take that away with them?
It's the generation that cares so much about the planet, they leave so much litter everywhere. But they want to make them prescription only, but I'm a bit like, well, does that make it more desirable? I don't know.
Prescribe vapes to kids, or...?
Well, I suppose what they're thinking
For
is if people are trying to give up smoking and they can't, you get prescribed a vape to help you get off. But like lots of people, you know, I remember my dad smoked for several years, but I was addicted to nicotine chewing gum for even longer because he just couldn't get off it, you know? Nicotine is so addictive.
So the worry about this is it's not about getting so much people off it, this is about getting people on it.
Yeah.
Right from the start. I mean, Isabel had to sit in a car with me for 3.5 hours yesterday, and when we got to the slip roads and the motorway and things, I'm sitting saying to her, now look out your window now. Who dumps the rubbish out the window there?
Litter.
It really annoys me. It really annoys me.
Right, it really annoys me.
Me too.
Yeah.
No, me too.
Yeah.
Sandwiches, cartons, milk bottles, whatever. And Isabel said those will be white van drivers.
I didn't. I said...
You did.
I said lorry drivers, actually. It's
all right.
different.
Well, lorry drivers are to blame for all of this.
No, because you see it in the lay-bys where they sleep. So I think they chuck their stuff out, and other bits and bobs.
Yeah.
Another story.
Well, is it? A lot of them, because they have so many deliveries, have to go to use their personal facility.
We just have to accept that people are very dirty. People are dirty. Do you not think people are dirty? But they're dirty beasts. They're dirty people. There's a lot of dirtiness out there. So there is.
Scrubby.
More than that. Dirty.
Speaking of...
You wouldn't do it. You're not a dirty person.
I'm not a litterer.
You should see the litter by this desk. Very clear.
Time Person of the Year.
Speaking of dirty beasts, yes, Time Person of the Year.
We were informed by Paul Coyte, who not only features in the Telegraph letters today, but he informed us that Hitler was Time Person of the Year in 1938.
He's so good at his research, he's taken my most interesting fact.
Sorry! No, maybe...
So previous winners of Time Person of the Year, Gandhi, Hitler, Churchill, Stalin, and bizarrely Planet Earth also won Time Person of the Year.
How weird!
And it's a very weird. And this year's list is no less weird.
But what are the criteria to be person before you go through this year's list? Because I saw one of the people that was mentioned. Is it because they've made an impact? It doesn't necessarily mean good or bad.
Yeah. So I'll give you the nominees for this year's list include, this isn't the full list, Taylor Swift, I mean, she's in everything, Xi Jinping, the Chinese premier, Vladimir Putin.
Oh, that's just a joke. That's
no,
ridiculous.
But I mean, he has had an indelible imprint on this year.
Yeah.
So
King Charles III, and also Barbie.
I find that really insulting, because it's like, couldn't they have picked Greta Gerwig, who is the director of the big Barbie film, or one of the actors or actresses? I mean, come on.
Apparently Putin was the Time Person of the Year in 2007, so he's been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
So he's probably not
I learned something yesterday about Xi Jinping. I got told by a colleague who's worked on a Chinese channel that they are never, ever allowed to broadcast the back of his head. On Chinese TV.
What, because it's offensive, or because
presumably it's but it is literally sackable offence.
It's a bit like that Elton John thing, isn't it? Years ago when he...
Well, whose head? Putin's head?
No, Xi Jinping's. So I thought that was an interesting fact that I would share with the world.
I'm going to be looking now the next time I see him on camera.
What did he start worried?
You
get spray.
Focus on the back of his head to compensate, just balance it out. Anyway.
But does he ever throw litter out of his car?
That's all we care about this morning.
This is it.
Doubt it somehow.
But yeah, but perhaps they'd have a celebrity death match of, a final. But if they made it like a round robin this time, personally, you could have Putin versus Barbie or Xi Jinping versus King Charles.
Who would it be for you of that list?
Well, there is another person, and that's the Hollywood strikes.
That's another nominee.
Really?
Another nominee, yes.
This is so American, isn't it?
Another nominee is Donald Trump's prosecutors.
Who are not named, because nobody knows who they are.
Although he names them quite often.
Yes, he does, that's
I can't remember their names. What's the Attorney General in New York who he constantly calls out a woman, young woman? Anyway, on that note, we say thank you to Nikki and to Andy.
Are we? What are we doing?
Oh, I thought I could hear you counting down something.
No. Vegan. We're going to talk about vegan diets, Nikki. The trend towards vegan diets is putting the health of pregnant women and babies at risk, OK?
Yeah, this is quite an interesting study that's saying that 90% of pregnant women are in deficit for B12, B6 and D vitamins. Vitamins that are found in plenty in meat and dairy products. So it's not actually saying that if you're a vegan, you're at risk of poor nutrition and poor nutrition for your baby. It's just saying that because people aren't consuming as much of those products anymore, there's a greater need for the vitamins. Now, when I was pregnant last year, we were all just told to take a multivitamin. That's exactly what they tell you to do at the beginning, and you just take that and it kind of compensates for anything that is lacking in your diet. And that's been the advice for, 10, 20 years. So there's kind of nothing new about telling people to, take something to supplement, take something extra. I think this Times piece is a bit of an extrapolation, because basically what it's saying is we think veganism is just not very good for you. And it's not strictly true, because everyone knows you can get those vitamins if you actually pay attention to your diet and you're a vegan. So it's just like, you just have to be mindful, that's all.
OK, guys, Nikki and Andy, thank you very much indeed. The guys are going to be back in about 45 minutes' time. Thank you.
Well, let's speak now to the Policing Minister, Chris Philp, who joins us live from Westminster. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us, indeed, standing outside. I know it's very chilly out there this morning. We want to talk to you about Rwanda this morning. Done deal. When's the first flight going to take off?
Well, we hope it'll take off as soon as possible. I certainly hope by spring. The Home Secretary did a great job yesterday, flying out to Kigali, getting that treaty signed, addressing the issues that were raised by the Supreme Court. We've now got a treaty that is binding in international law. It guarantees that no one the UK sends over to Rwanda can be sent off anywhere else afterwards, which is one of the issues the Supreme Court in their judgment raised. So this should deal with all the issues which the judgment brought to the fore, and should pave the way to flights getting off, as you say.
Hope, and you say the word should, which points to the fact that there are lots of possible stumbling blocks between now and any possible flight taking off, not least another legal challenge, which could not only delay things right up to the next election, but could also expose these huge divisions which we're hearing about in the papers this morning within the Conservative Party. 11 ministers on resignation watch to the left of the party, and then this coalescence of the right, the ESG, the New Conservatives and the Common Sense Conservatives, all in another trench. And the question remains, is this actually addressing the concerns of the British people on immigration, or is this just the Tories fighting each other?
No, this is addressing the concerns of the British people on immigration, the very legitimate concerns. It's not acceptable that last year we had almost 50,000 people illegally entering the country, illegally and unnecessarily, because France is a safe country. Now, it's down by a third this year, thanks to all the other measures that we're taking, and I'm sure everybody, both the public and in Parliament, would welcome the 1/3 reduction in illegal immigration. But we need to make sure that this deal sticks, and the bill that's going to be prepared and presented in the near future will make sure that this is legally watertight, and that, I think, is something that everybody will get behind in Parliament. I think it's what the public expect to see as well, because illegal immigration on this scale is completely unacceptable, and the treaty that was signed yesterday and the bill that will follow will end that.
Yes, but that is, at the moment, just your opinion and the opinion of the people that have put this policy together. If it's tested in court, nobody knows which way it would go. If it's not found in favour of the government, then there is this possibility that you might decide to disapply parts of the European Convention on Human Rights. And that's why we're hearing about these 10 ministers on resignation watch. Why do you think they're concerned about it and threatening to quit?
Well, let's wait and see what the bill says. We need to make sure this bill does whatever is necessary to make this arrangement legally effective and immune from challenge by the court. Parliament has been very clear. Parliament has voted clearly in favour of the scheme to return illegal arrivals to Rwanda. We need to make sure that is completely legally watertight and immune from challenge. It's ultimately a question of parliamentary sovereignty. Parliament is ultimately sovereign. It's elected by the people, and this bill that will come forward will do everything necessary to make sure that the will of Parliament does get enacted and doesn't get unpicked.
Chris, I look at this, and after you take away all the controversy about whether people should be sent to Rwanda or not, I always come back to the same question, which is the whole world doesn't seem to want these migrants, but yet Rwanda does. Why does Rwanda want these people? Is this a money only? Is this a business deal for them?
Well, I think that's the question you'd ultimately have to ask Rwanda, but they are willing to play a constructive partnership role, not just with the UK. They actually work also with the UNHCR. The UNHCR themselves already send refugees to Rwanda. So it's not just a deal that Rwanda have done with the UK. Look, I think there is a global problem with large-scale illegal immigration. We've seen it in the United States. I think in September alone, they had about 200,000 people illegally crossing their southern border. We've seen illegal migration into Europe, particularly across the Mediterranean, going up dramatically this year. So this is a problem that's not going away. We do need to take tough action. Other countries like like Austria, Germany and Italy are beginning to consider measures like these as well. As I say, it's good that in the UK we have actually got the illegal immigration numbers down by a third this year compared to last year, whereas in Europe they're going up. But
really quickly,
we need to go further and stop it completely.
OK, one of the measures to try and tackle legal migration has raised concerns about any Brits that fall in love overseas and then they want their foreign partner to come and live in this country. If they earn less than £38,000, which apparently 3/4 of Brits do, they won't be allowed in. Going to stop people falling in love.
No, well, it's important to make sure that where people who live in the UK want to bring someone, a non-UK citizen in, that there is a salary threshold, and that's the same salary threshold that's applied or being proposed to be applied to skilled workers as well. We've seen the legal migration numbers that were published a week or so ago were far, far too high. We made a manifesto commitment to get migration down, and it's important that we honour that manifesto commitment, and that's what we're doing.
OK, we've got to say goodbye. Thank you. We're out of time. Chris Philp, Policing Minister, appreciate your thoughts this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll appreciate your company after this break.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a dry and bright day for many of us, but it still feels rather cold after the chilly start. But later on we'll see some rain arriving in the west. Now there's an ice warning in force still through the morning across northeastern areas of Scotland. And elsewhere, though, we'll see plenty of dry and clear weather through much of the day. Any freezing fog should slowly lift and clear further south and west, but the sunshine will start to turn a little bit hazier across western parts of the UK, and rain will arrive into Northern Ireland. Temperatures will start to rise, though, highs of 12 degrees in the Scilly Isles later, still feeling very cold in the east, however, despite the sunshine. And then that rain through tonight will push further east. We've got weather warnings in force for parts of Northern Ireland overnight, and then tomorrow morning into parts of the southwest of the UK. That could bring some hill snow to parts of the Pennines and Scotland for a time, but mostly we'll be seeing a lot of heavy rain. Temperatures as a result will slowly start to rise, so there's much less of a risk of a frost through tonight. And then through Thursday, the rain really does continue, so quite a damp, cloudy day, and with weather warnings in force through much of the day across parts of Scotland and these western areas. Many of us will see rain on and off throughout the day. There could be water lingering on the roads as well, so do take care if you're travelling throughout Thursday. Later on, though, in the west, we will see the sunshine return and temperatures rising into double digits for many of us. I'll see you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's just gone 7 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 6th of December. It is lovely to have your company this morning, and you
Lovely
are
to have
tuned
your
into
company
Is
today.
it?
Yes,
Aw,
I love
not
when
too
you're-
much of me yesterday.
No, you could. Isabel, one thing I could not have is too much of you.
Lies.
Yes, but you were very caring to me yesterday.
Oh,
Very
of
good.
course, always.
Helped me hobbling around the place.
Well, I thought you were very mobile, actually.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
It's great.
Leading the news this morning, this is what we've got for you. As the political pressure piles up from both wings of the Conservative Party over the Rwanda agreement, Catherine Foster has the latest on that.
Yes, the government has another plan to get migrants to Rwanda. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party fighting amongst themselves, as so often happens. When and will they ever get anybody on a plane to Africa?
Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson set to defend his handling of the pandemic during a 2-day grilling at the COVID inquiry.
A show of royal unity at Buckingham Palace last night. At the same time, Prince Harry's legal moves at the High Court continue.
And what's the forecast looking for today? Annie Shuttleworth has the latest.
Good morning. Many of us will have woken up to some crisp winter scenes, but there's rain in the forecast by the end of the day for some of us. You can find out more with me a little bit later on.
You want to contribute, you want to be involved in the programme, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Got some funny ones.
Huh?
Eamon's
Oh, yeah.
absolutely right. People are dirty.
Dirty, filthy, disgusting.
And then said
They are
lorry drivers
dirty.
are often disgusting. If you are a lorry driver, please get in touch and defend yourself. And this one's come in from Sharon. She said, I'm pretty sure I can feel a campaign coming on. Keep Britain tidy, GB News.
Definitely.
Take your litter home. Whatever happened to that one? Well, we could reignite that, couldn't we?
Yeah, there used to be campaigns. We used to have these public service announcements, and they would be the lions at Trafalgar Square would come alive and they would say, "Pick it up."
I don't remember that.
I know, well, you don't remember anything.
No.
You know, pick it up, pick it up. Did you have television when you were young? Did your parents allow you to
I
watch
watched
it?
LOLO a lot.
Oh, that was very saucy.
Oh, well, I watched some the
Yes.
other day thinking I would enjoy it. It was so bad.
It didn't
hasn't
age well, that's the
No.
term, yes.
GB Views at gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GB News.
Litter's the subject. OK, so James Cleverly was the latest Home Secretary to fly out to Rwanda. Who went? Priti Patel went, Swala Braverman went.
Now, James Cleverly, I think he's the third.
Right. Is
More
he?
Home
No, I think it was
Secretaries.
somebody else. I think he's the fourth.
Boris definitely went out, but he wasn't as Home Secretary. I'm pretty sure Boris went and spent some time.
Somebody went out anyway. They're all going out all the time.
Apart from the asylum seekers.
Well, I thought it was a very good point, and that MP hadn't thought of this, Chris Philp, who we'd on earlier. And I basically say, so you do business with the country, right? So we say, we've got all these migrants that we don't want, basically. Who's going to take them? So Rwanda says, we'll take them, and we don't ask why.
Well, I do know the answer to that.
Which is?
Well, there was a dreadful genocide, as we all know,
Yes.
and it actually had huge implications on the population. And so the economy has been trying to increase ever since. And so they actually take in people from other countries already.
So that's what they're saying. So I would love to know also, did we pick up the phone and say, hello, Rwanda, hello, Mr. President,
Yeah,
Rwanda?
we called lots of countries, and Rwanda was, at the time, seemed to be the most likely to succeed. A lot of other countries we couldn't get anywhere with, and they are still trying
How
to...
do you know all this?
I've just been covering this story for so long. But they've pursued it with some other countries, for example, in South America. But the feeling is, yes, we could get there, but not in time for the election. So all the eggs were put in that basket. And when everyone said the Supreme Court judgment recently was pretty final, people were saying, well, why don't we just give up? But the truth was, there isn't time before an election to find another country to pursue this third.
So it's like writing a letter to Santa and say, dear Santa, for Christmas we would like rid of all these people. Would you find somebody to take them for us? Anyway, Catherine Foster will now tell you all the bits you didn't know.
So the government is trying to tread a really fine line here, not least with its own MPs. 3 separate groups from the right of the party meeting yesterday. They want to scrutinise the legislation on Rwanda that the government's going to be bringing forward in the coming days. Meanwhile, there's 10 members of the government on resignation watch, including 4 cabinet ministers, concerned that the government might try to go too far. But meanwhile, yesterday, we had the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, in Kigali, signing a new deal with Rwanda and sounding confident. Let's have a little look at what he had to say.
I see no reasons why there should be any more impairments to doing the right thing to break the business model of these people smuggling gangs and for the humane and professional treatment of refugees that Rwanda is offering.
Final. So new Home Secretary James Cleverly there sounding confident. But what does this treaty mean in practice? Well, let's have a little look. The main stumbling block with the Supreme Court was that they didn't consider Rwanda to be a safe country because of the risk that asylum seekers might be sent back to their original country and be put at risk. Now, this new deal puts an end to that, guaranteeing that they won't be sent back either to their own country or to a third country, although there is a possible exception that some might be sent to the UK, which was not in the original plan. Now, also, there's a new appeal body being set up, which will be staffed by British and Commonwealth judges, and an independent monitoring committee is being enhanced. There'll also be UK experts sent out there to help process asylum claims. Now, we'll see the legislation that goes along with this in the coming days. The government is hopeful that this will be enough to get flights off the ground in the spring. But I think worth bearing in mind, we've already spent £140 million on this deal with Rwanda. We've sent 3 Home Secretaries, not a single migrant yet. And although the last Home Secretary before James Cleverly said it was her dream, so Ella Braverman said, to see a plane load of people take off for Rwanda, will it ever become a reality?
Thank you very much indeed, Catherine. Very well explained. A few questions there. We put questions to Chris Philp, the government minister, about 20 minutes ago. This is what he had to say.
Well, we hope it'll take off as soon as possible. I certainly hope by spring. The Home Secretary did a great job yesterday, flying out to Kigali, getting that treaty signed, addressing the issues that were raised by the Supreme Court. We've now got a treaty that is binding in international law. It guarantees that no one the UK sends over to Rwanda can be sent off anywhere else afterwards, which is one of the issues the Supreme Court in their judgment raised. So this should deal with all the issues which the judgment brought to the fore and should pave the way to flights getting off, as you say.
Well, let's bring in HuffPost political editor Kevin Schofield and Lorraine Menser, who's an immigration barrister from the Barrister Group. Good morning to you both. Should we start with the question that I put to the Minister straight after that quote that he just gave us there, which was he used the word, I hope these flights will take off and they should address the issues of the court. The problem is they haven't been tested in court, so it might be very well government believing that is the case, but until it goes through the court, we won't really know. What is your assessment from a sort of professional point of view, Lorraine, about whether or not this does address those concerns raised by the Supreme Court?
Well, I have had a look this morning at the deal, that is the Rwandan treaty published by the UK government yesterday. I think one of the difficulties is, although there are procedural safeguards the government are putting in place through the treaty, one of the concerns underpinning the judgment of the Supreme Court is the lack of independence in the legal system, particularly in politically sensitive cases in Rwanda, and whether there was going to be a change in attitude of the Rwandan government and the officials involved. Particularly, the Supreme Court was concerned about the attitude to asylum claims from Middle Eastern countries such as Syrians and Afghans. And so the Supreme Court have left a question mark over whether procedural safeguards in a document are going to be sufficient to meet those challenges.
Reassured to hear that UK and Commonwealth judges will be sent to oversee any appeals in all of that, as well as UK experts to help go through those asylum claims. I mean, on the face of it, it seems like the Home Secretary's really tried, hasn't he, Kevin, to address those specific concerns?
Yeah, well, he's tried his best to try and address the concerns raised by the Supreme Court. I mean, the difficulty, I guess, for the government is that this new treaty and this emergency legislation, when it finally appears and is passed, those will also be challenged in the court, and they've no way of knowing whether or not that will be successful and whether the flights will take off. I mean, it was quite interesting yesterday. Once again, James Cleverly was asked, will these flights take off by next spring, which is what the government wants, and he just said he hopes so. He wants them to leave as soon as possible. So they've got absolutely no guarantee that this will be effective. They're basically just trying their best to assuage the Supreme Court and hope that it's enough to see off any legal challenges and get those flights off. But again, then you're rubbing up very closely to the next general election. And let's not forget that the Prime Minister's pledge was that he would stop the boats, not reduce the boats, not get flights off to Rwanda. It's stop the boats crossing the channel. And I think he's some way short of actually achieving that.
I suppose, Kevin, one way round it would be to sort of disapply parts of the ECHR if there was a legal challenge, and that presumably is why a number of what you'd sort of, I don't know how you describe the now One Nation left of the party Conservatives are on resignation watch, according to the Telegraph this morning. 10 of them.
Yeah, well, the One Nation caucus put out a rather punchy statement last night, basically saying, this would be a red line for them if the government talked about, coming out of the ECHR. The problem that Rishi Sunak's got, though, is that if he moves to keep the left of the party happy, he annoys the right of the party, who have said that you have to keep that as an option. So he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. He's trying to find a way of pleasing everyone, which, as we all know, quite often ends up pleasing absolutely no one.
Lorraine, are you pleased by what you've seen in terms of, you know, a deterrent? Because, I mean, whatever view you take on the legality of it all, you know, the criminal gangs that are in charge of these illegal crossings put people's lives at risk, and the government say that their plan is a deterrent and hopefully it will stop that kind of activity.
Well, as you can imagine, as a barrister, my focus is on ensuring that any steps that are taken are lawful and provide the protections. Can I just pick up on a point that has just been raised about the European Convention on Human Rights? The Supreme Court makes it absolutely clear that this isn't just about the European Convention. The United Kingdom and Rwanda are signed up to international treaties, just as the treaty that the UK government has sought to sign with Rwanda, which protect our own citizens and those that enter our territories from being tortured and suffering inhumane and degrading treatment, protecting liberties, protecting political rights, including, for example, the rights of journalists like yourselves to be able to speak freely and criticise its own government. And so these are fundamental liberties which are protected by international treaty. It isn't just as simple as saying that we're going to come out of the European Convention on Human Rights.
Guys, we've got to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed, Lorraine Mensah and Kevin Schofield. We turn to matters royal now, and the King was joined by the Queen, Prince William and Princess Catherine at a Buckingham Palace reception last night, which traditionally heralds the start of the festive period for the royals. The annual gathering welcomes over 500 members of the diplomatic corps in the staterooms at Buckingham Palace.
Well, it came as Prince Harry's High Court challenge continued against the Home Office over his security protection whilst visiting the UK, and a second day continues in the High Court today. He's challenging a ruling that saw his security status downgraded after he stopped being a working royal.
Rafe Hadel-Mancoux joins us now. He's a royal historian and broadcaster. So this is an appeal against the original decision. Do you have any sympathy with him?
No, because actually this case boils down to essentially Prince Harry believing that he's entitled to all of the perks and privileges of royalty without any of the obligations and responsibility. It's also actually worth pointing out that this is Prince Harry taking his father's government to court, and that's completely without precedent. We've never seen a royal do anything like this. Now, of course, Prince Harry is alleging that he's been treated unfairly, as you said, that he's been singled out, but the Home Office is quite clear and refutes that and says, you know, you are no longer a member of the working royal family, and therefore your security status must be downgraded. He alleges there are members of the royal household who are sitting on the committee that revoked his security status, but they say, well, this would have happened whoever was sitting on the committee, and it seems quite clear actually that the.
But could I just ask you a question? Prince Andrew, right? So he's not a working royal now. Does he have a security detail?
No, so his security has been stripped from him as well.
Ooh,
so
but he's not complaining.
And he is also complaining about it, but not quite so vocally and vociferously. He's having discussions behind closed doors about this too. But certainly, you know, but it's not really an issue for the King. This is a matter, as always, for the Metropolitan Police and for the committee to look at. It's a matter of operational issues, and essentially they've said, look, you are actually getting royal protection. You're getting a bespoke level of royal protection. Like any dignitary who comes, we will view each visit on its own merits, and you'll get the right level of security appropriate to that visit. Just as, if you may remember, during the coronation, we waited for weeks, if not months, for Harry to say whether he was coming or not.
Yes,
and one of the reasons we heard was because he didn't think that the security would be sufficient for him. But it was fine for the President of France. They made no complaints about that. The First Lady of America didn't have any problems with security.
Well, they would have had the same level.
Yes, for some reason, Harry thinks that he's a special case. And he has to realise, of course, that he's no longer as important as he once was. He's suffering from that problem.
Once a royal, always a royal.
Well, he's suffering from that problem of younger brothers being second in line to the throne at one point. Now he's fifth in line to the throne. He's not that important. If he wants to have royal protection, he could easily hire former royal protection officers who no longer serve in the Metropolitan Police, either as part of his own security detail or as consultants to train his American team. They won't have guns, but apart from that, they'll be every bit as well equipped.
But Rafe, of course, he is a special case. He made himself even more vulnerable by bragging about how many members of the Taliban he killed in his book called Spare, to steal a famous joke.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. He's not made life easy for himself, but it was his decision. He knows full well if he wants that royal protection, he just has to come back within the royal fold as a prodigal son returning back to his father. But of course, remember, California is far more dangerous than Britain is. You know, John Lennon was shot in New York, not in London. They've had 4 American presidents assassinated. We only had Spencer Perceval as a prime minister, and that was back in 1812 who got assassinated. So if he's happy with his life in America, I think Britain is a much safer country, all things being told.
But I presume he has got an armed detail, a private armed detail that he hires in America.
Yes, he has a private armed detail there, but there's no reason he can't have the same detail over here, but without the guns. But as I've said, every visit he makes here, as long as he gives enough warning to the Metropolitan Police, he does receive protection.
Well, personally, I'd much rather be talking about the fabulous pictures that are all over the front pages this morning of the King and the future King and Queen, all their finery, putting on a united front in the wake of yet more unfounded allegations against them.
This is a much better story. I mean, we have glorious pictures across all of the papers today showing the new Fab Four. You remember the old Fab Four included the Sussexes? This is the new power team, and it's quite wonderful. This is the most glittering and glamorous event of the year, the Diplomatic Corps Ball, and we've seen a white tie and decorations and tiaras, and really showing a very secure, very happy and content royal family going on with business as usual.
Do you happen to know if when you wear white tie as opposed to black tie?
Yeah, white tie is for state events. Black tie was invented by King Edward VII as a more informal way to have dinners. I think it's a very retrograde step. I always go for white tie.
Really?
Where you
I
can.
was brought up that white tie was a bit American.
No. No. Well, the tuxedo is actually more of the American sense.
Right,
That's
the tuxedo with white tie is very American.
Americans will even have weddings in their black tie.
Yeah.
White tie, this is as formal as you get. Unfortunately, the King and the Prince of Wales have ceased to wear knee breeches, which they used to wear, and Prince Philip always wore. Over the last 2 or 3 years, they now wear trousers, unfortunately, but we'll let them get away with that.
So give me this again. They would go to a formal event in knee breeches, like knickerbockers.
Like when they go shooting. They still wear the shooting.
Court dress. Formal court dress requires you to wear proper pump shoes with little opera shoes, so that and then you can wear the Order of the Garter around your lovely modelled calf. You see, so that it allows you to show it off. But as the King has got a bit older, he didn't wear breeches to the coronation, and he's chosen not to wear them here. These are the pressing issues people at home want to know about.
Do you own a pair?
I own 2 pairs.
Of course you do.
Well, as I go larger, I have to keep buying more and more clothes. But yes, I have two well-worn pairs of white tie, but no breeches, unfortunately.
Well, that's what I want to know about the breeches. I suspect they do have some still for shooting. It's very much the shooting regalia for stalking and things, but perhaps not for formal ones.
I had to wear a white tie once. I forget what it was. It was a film we were making.
I was there with you, actually.
Were you?
I was in the lineup, but you didn't know it, and I shook your hand at the time. Yes, that was many years ago for the London season debutante ball, Queen Charlotte's ball.
It was exactly
and you were there
what
with
it
Ruth.
was.
Yes. And I was in white tie for the occasion.
See, how come I never remember anything about myself?
What we're here for.
Maybe we can find the footage. Yeah, that'll be rather fun.
That's exactly what it was for.
Well, let's find the footage.
Debutante's ball.
Fabulous. Were you wearing breeches then?
No.
Oh, shame.
You would be a good debutante. You could be presented.
I'd love to have been a debutante, yeah.
Yeah,
married better. Joking.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Ray. I feel always fascinating to talk to you, mate. Thank you for the insight in all of that and your opinions.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, we ended on a high after it started a bit negative, that story. On that, will the weather end on a high? Here's Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a dry and bright day for many of us, but it still feel rather cold after the chilly start. But later on, we'll see some rain arriving in the west. Now, there's an ice warning in force still through the morning across northeastern areas of Scotland. And elsewhere, though, we'll see plenty of dry and clear weather through much of the day. Any freezing fog should slowly lift and clear further south and west, but the sunshine will start to turn a little bit hazier across western parts of the UK, and rain will arrive into Northern Ireland. Temperatures will start to rise, though, highs of 12 degrees in the Scilly Isles later, still feeling very cold in the east, however, despite the sunshine. And then that rain through tonight will push further east. We've got weather warnings in force for parts of Northern Ireland overnight, and then tomorrow morning into parts of the southwest of the UK. That could bring some hill snow to parts of the Pennines and Scotland for a time, but mostly we'll be seeing a lot of heavy rain. Temperatures as a result will slowly start to rise, so there's much less of a risk of a frost through tonight. And then through Thursday, the rain really does continue, so quite a damp, cloudy day, and with weather warnings in force through much of the day across parts of Scotland and these western areas. Many of us will see rain on and off throughout the day. There could be water lingering on the roads as well, so do take care if you're travelling throughout Thursday. Later on, though, in the west, we will see the sunshine return and temperatures rising into double digits for many of us. I'll see you later.
Still to come, the government is persevering with their Rwanda plan, but we're asking,
should the deal just be scrapped? Debating that next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist. And you survived? I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Look, you'll have seen all the news reports yesterday about the Home Secretary going to Rwanda. We've been discussing it and leading with it on the programme today. We're getting your opinions, your comments, your feeling about this. The government are saying this new treaty, whatever they've done, whatever they've tweaked, will guarantee the safety of asylum seekers sent to Rwanda. The question is, well, why wasn't it already guaranteeing that?
Well, let's speak to Neil Hamilton, the leader of UKIP, and Ivan Sampson, the principal solicitor and head of immigration. Good morning to both of you. Can I start with you, Neil? Is it really the place for politicians to declare a country safe after the top lawyers in the land have unanimously declared that it isn't?
Well, obviously, Parliament could legislate that black is white, but that doesn't actually make black white. This is the problem with this kind of legislation. It's not going to meet the tests which the Supreme Court laid down in its judgment, because the key question here is whether Rwanda is a safe place to send asylum seekers. And the Supreme Court decided it wasn't because the UN High Commission for Refugees said it wasn't. They had assurances from the UK government and the Rwanda government, and I'm afraid that the Supreme Court preferred the view of the UN High Commission for Refugees. That's based on another international treaty that the UK is part of, as well as the ECHR. It's the 1951 UN Convention on the Status of Refugees and the 1967 protocol to that.
Okay.
I'm afraid this proposed legislation will not meet those tests set down by the Supreme Court, and unless the proposed legislation is absolutely explicit so that there's no reasonable cause of action for any potential claimant against the government for being sent to Rwanda, then there is no chance of this policy working before the next election or indeed at all.
Interesting. So, Ivan, Neil's saying that it won't meet the demands of the Supreme Court. Where will that leave us?
Well, I agree with Neil that it won't. And my dear friend Laura Dubinsky from Dowd Street Chambers was representing the UNCHR, and the Supreme Court accepted their evidence. That there was basically 3 points. The one is that they didn't accept the assurances given by the Rwanda government of non-refoulement, sending people back to their country. 2, that they didn't have a proper system of determining asylum applications.
But those issues have been addressed, haven't they, in what was proposed by the Home Secretary yesterday?
I don't think they have.
Because
well,
they said that anyone that was at risk of refoulement would actually be sent back to the UK, and the processing would now be done by UK experts in Rwanda.
But at the end of the day, you're doing a treaty with another country, and the credibility of that country is important to ensure that they comply with treaty obligations. Rwanda isn't a country that we should even be considering doing a treaty with. If you read Human Rights Watch reports, 2022 report recently said anyone who opposed the president goes missing. I mean, do we want to be doing treaties with them? Can we trust? The Supreme Court essentially doesn't trust the Rwandan government.
But the British government trusts them, or is buying them, or money will buy you anything. Have you thought about how much money's involved in this, and what was the extra payment for of 15 million yesterday?
Well, Article 18 of the treaty sets out what the financial implications are. It's a one-liner. And what it says in Article 18 of the new treaty is that financial compensation will be made to the Rwandan government. What that is, how much that will be, we simply don't know. And we know the first tranche is 15 million, but we don't know how much more. And how many people we sent, who's going to pay for accommodation, who's going to build it, and so forth. So I think it's going to be very expensive for us if the policy becomes law.
OK, well, look, it seems as though across this panel, indeed, looking at the inbox, a lot of people sceptical about whether or not this is going to work at all. What happens next, in your view, Neil? I mean, there are now these 3 groups within the Conservative Party joining forces, if you like. It's as if Rwanda's become the new Europe for the Conservatives. Will it tear the party apart, or will it be, expedite a resolution? I mean, they'll be hoping and agitating for the ECHR to be either reformed or ignored in parts.
Well, I'm afraid the Conservative Party is not fit for purpose if you want to introduce strict immigration control or to solve the problems that we're currently suffering as a result of the abuse of the asylum system. There is too big a minority in the Conservative Party in Parliament to permit the government, even if it had the will to do, which I don't believe it has, to leave the European Convention on Human Rights or to derogate from some of its provisions, still less the 1951 UN Refugee Convention. And without making it absolutely explicit that we're not going to be bound by the provisions of those 2 treaties or conventions, there is no way in which legislation can work to achieve what the government says it wants to achieve. As Ivan said a moment ago, what we're faced with here is another treaty, which is actually, I think, in conflict with other treaties which the government has signed. And in the Supreme Court judgment, the judges unanimously said that international treaty law is now part of the customary international law by which all countries who accept international law are bound, and in particular the United Kingdom. So I'm afraid the government is just pussyfooting about the problem, and what they are proposing to do just tinkers with certain elements of the Supreme Court judgment, but it doesn't actually go to the very nub of what that judgment says. And until you do that, you won't solve the problem.
And this treaty, Ivan, is what, going nowhere?
No, I think that ultimately it'll be decided by the European Convention on Human Rights, unless, of course, the new legislation that they call it emergency, but they've known about it for weeks, to be honest. I don't know why it's called an emergency legislation. Unless that excludes the provisions of the European Convention, and as Neil quite rightly said, the provisions of the Refugee Convention and the UN Convention on the Prevention of Torture as well. That's another convention that the Supreme Court alluded to. So unless that's excluded, I mean, this treaty will not fly with the Supreme Court, and it will end up with the European Court of Human Rights.
It'll not fly, and
literally.
Neither will any migrants, by the sound of it. Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed. The clock has beaten us. Neil Hamilton, Ivan Sampson, thank you both. Thank you.
Well, we're now joined by the Shadow Minister for Policing, Alex Norris. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. We've seen the comments by Yvette Cooper. She believes that this isn't going to work, and you want to focus instead on the issue of asylum seekers here in the UK and trying to process those applications more efficiently. But, I mean, that's something that this government's been trying to do for a long time, and it just hasn't worked.
But Isabel, I think that's part of the problem. You know, look at the time and energy and money that ministers have put into this scheme, which we know is a gimmick. You know, in the Court of Appeal, we're talking about perhaps 100 people. Well, the scheme's already cost 140 million and counting. Instead, that money and that effort could be going into, yes, processing people more quickly here, beefing up our returns units so those who don't have a legitimate claim are returned home, but also to make actions that will stop people entering the channel, such as better investment in cross-border criminal intelligence and organised crime breaking up. You know, that's where we would put our time and money, and that would make a much better difference.
We've spoken to a number of shadow Labour ministers over recent months about this, and they always quote that. And I come back to the comments of the National Crime Agency themselves. This isn't my comments, this isn't the Conservative Party's comments, this is their comments. And they say that they alone would not be able to stop the boats or address this issue that you're talking about without policies like the Rwanda deal, which is why the new Home Secretary has done his very best, you have to admit, to address all of the concerns that have been raised by the Supreme Court.
Well, I can't accept that line of argument because, you know, last week alone, 1,000 people entered the channel and made that dangerous journey. What we're talking about with Rwanda is 100 people. So that's a tenth of last week alone. Never mind the, 150-odd thousand people we have waiting for decisions. So the idea that this scheme in some way will unlock all of our problems here, I think is for the birds. I think the ministers should be using their time and money on more effective methods.
Plans underway. We've seen the use of barges, something that Labour has said that they would continue under if they were to win next year. And so these are the other measures that the government has been using to tackle what is clearly a very complex issue.
Well, of course it's a complex issue, and it's about where you prioritise your effort. You know, I don't think that listeners at home or viewers at home will be thinking that £8 million a day spent on emergency accommodation is a very good investment. What we're asking, and I think this is what people are asking, is why isn't the energy going into and the resourcing going into speeding up those applications, then moving people back if they don't have a legitimate claim, and then taking early interventions like the one I mentioned around organised crime, but also around making sure there aren't pull factors and push factors from other countries, so helping, say, with long-term climate issues, helping with issues around conflict. You know, serious approaches to what is, as you say, a complex problem, rather than what we've got instead, which is this seemingly, annual trip where we send more Home Secretaries to Rwanda than any potential migrants.
Whilst I've got you, can I ask you about another story that's making front pages this morning, and this is Labour policy on vaping. There's a big crackdown, isn't there, at the moment to try and stop it becoming what is a gateway drug, as Wes Streeting, Shadow Health Secretary, calls them. The risk, I suppose, with all of this is if you make them prescription only for adults, this will just force the market underground. And we know already the big problem of these vapes coming into the country full of absolute rubbish. Isn't it better to know what we have, to have it legally regulated, and obviously discourage education campaigns, whatever it might be? But to make it prescription only could actually make things worse.
Well, I don't think that's an either-or choice. You know, it is clear and has been clear for a very long time that we need better regulation of this market for exactly the reasons you say, that at the moment we've got no real sense of what's going into these products and how they work. You know, we should be, of course, moving that onto a more regulated footing. We know that this is a highly effective quit aid, but we also don't want to start a generation of children on this because we don't know the long-term consequences. So, you know, the job of government, I think, is to find the balance between those possible harms, and, you know, the position as Wes has put out, we think is about the right balance.
OK. Really good to talk to you. Alex Norris, Shadow Minister for Policing. Thank you very much.
Time is 7:37 on this Wednesday morning. Up next, never mind a turkey dinner for Christmas. Some of you are thinking of turkey teeth and Brazilian bottom lifts.
Crikey.
Next.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, we're getting down and dirty, quite literally, with Nicky Hodgson and Andy Jones, with the stories that are making the headlines. And litter was something that we started talking about today, Andy, and we were getting a bit of a debate on it. And you have found another story that backs this up. Tell us more.
So Jason Manford, comedian and TV personality, and also actor, is now treading the boards in various pantomimes, including Jack and the Beanstalk at Manchester Opera House.
Yeah.
And Jason Manford, who's not shy of putting an opinion or two on social media, he's been litter-shaming, shocking audience behaviour for leaving rubbish on theatre seats. And he's gone up and down the aisles. As perhaps, Eamonn, Holmes, you might have done this yourself. You were talking about the rubbish earlier on and shaming littering in the streets.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what the answer to this one is. OK, so you go out to the cinema or the theatre, and there you see it. We all know the situation. You buy your box of Maltesers or whatever.
People just miss their mouths, don't they?
They miss their mouths. And I miss my mouth quite often, I have to say. But if you've got a bit of litter there, is the protocol you take it away with you?
Yes. Always. Any litter. You never just chuck something on the floor.
But Isabel, I think that's standard practice, what you're looking at there. I don't think that's unusual.
There is a bit hard sometimes in the dark, and it's a narrow seat if you drop something to rummage around and distract everyone else. I understand that.
If you could bring it in a bag, you can take it out in a bag.
Some of these people need troughs. Some of these people, it's just a disgrace.
True. But you see, now, my friend, you are fed. I mean, you can have a meal on a plate with a knife and fork and whatever at the cinema. So, I mean, they encourage it.
The thing is, though, at the beginning of a film or a theatre production, they say, oh, turn your mobile phone off. Why can't they just say at the end, and take, we hope you've had a gorgeous time and take your litter home with you? I honestly think that would make a big difference.
Yeah. Treat them like children.
You've got to prompt people. You've got to treat them like children and prompt them.
I know people like a snack. But also, the amount of stuff people take in, they're only in there for like 2 hours.
I don't understand why you need to
Revels,
eat so much.
Maltesers, hot dogs,
You've
popcorn.
presumably already eaten your supper or your tea or whatever before you go in. Why do you then need to stuff your face for the duration of a comedy show? Jason Manford, excellent. That means a whole thing of popcorn.
Is it because the lights
It's American.
down?
It's American.
I can understand a glass of something or two.
No, I blame the Americans and everything, that you can't go and watch a sports game without sticking a sausage down your throat or whatever.
We should play innuendo bingo this morning.
It's rife, isn't it?
I do think it's a massive American influence.
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think of, sitting at Old Trafford and eating in my seat. I mean, I can understand half-time. You go somewhere, get a cup of tea and a biscuit or whatever.
Yes, half-time. What happened to that?
At United, you only buy the food to throw it on the pitch, don't you, these days? But jeer the players. Throw a pie.
This segues in nicely to the next story. I'm sorry, it's another Andy story. We will come to you, Nicky. You can chip in, of course. But seeing as we're talking about food, anti-obesity policies to stop takeaways being open near schools are being thwarted.
Yes.
I do think it's immoral that between, say, a bus stop and a school, you can have an umpteen fried chicken shops. And actually, where my kids went to school in London, the local ice cream van would come and park outside the gates. And then all the kids would do, Mummy, please can I have an ice cream? And it's like...
You feel like a terrible parent if you say no, then, don't you?
But actually...
So KFC are involved in these legal blocks, Andy?
So, of course, the councils are desperately trying to stop this thing that is annoying Isabel as a mum, fast food restaurants opening near schools. But fast food restaurants have very deep pockets, and KFC, particularly, has been particularly aggressive about defending its patch. In 16 out of 43 cases, KFC has convinced inspectors to throw out council plans. So councils are trying to do the good thing and saying, well, look, we've got enough takeaways around here. And in Solihull, which is where I grew up, Lytall Secondary School, shout out, they successfully banned KFC, and then the council then lost 40 grand defending this action because KFC were able to say, well, actually, there isn't enough data that says putting fast food outlets near schools increases in obesity, or that fast food is bad for you, or all of these other things, because legally the evidence has to stand up in court, and they're able to throw it out. And so in 16 in 43 cases, KFC has convinced inspectors to row back on plans. So you're not just fighting the bulge, you're fighting against very expensive
We
lawyers.
just know that habits in childhood continue throughout life. And if these kids get into the habit of every time they go down the street buying something unhealthy, it carries on.
But also, I remember at school, once there was a fast food outlet around the school, it immediately gave everyone a license to say, oh, school meals, canteen, not go in there. This is much better to take your money and spend it down here.
Absolutely. And it is a money thing, isn't it? Because, you know, fast food actually isn't that cheap anymore. You know, if you've been given a bit of pocket money or a bit of money for your lunch, I don't know how far it stretches, probably just to some chips or some chicken. The other thing, minor point, but if you've got a dog, as I do, chicken shops are really dangerous for dogs because they're so attracted to like the waste left over and the chicken bones. You know, the numbers of times my little sausage dog has nearly choked on a chicken bone. It's notorious for it. So again, it's...
What, from rubbish?
Yeah, from the rubbish. So again, it's just, I kind of find them quite antisocial, these kinds of restaurants. So.
But I'm fascinated to hear that you've got a sausage dog. Are you worried about your sausage dog's back? I think they're beautiful, cute dogs, but with such little stubby, tiny legs and such a long back.
Maggie's half sausage
Yes,
dog.
Maggie's half sausage. Yeah, so the trick is you've just got to slightly underfeed them. They're so greedy. I mean, all dogs want snacks, but they're so terrible. He can't sit properly because of the way their back legs are. He squats.
Yeah.
So sometimes he'll just go squat by the cupboard with the food and wait for a treat. And you just got to deny him.
Oh.
So you've got to keep them slim, but he's a very happy little dog.
Well, could you see your...
Herbie.
Herbie?
Herbie,
Could you see Herbie mating with a border collie?
I mean, I don't know if I could physically watch that happen, but I mean, I do want some puppies eventually.
Well, I got the DNA test on a Maggie, and she is sausage dog and border collie. So
it's just wild, isn't it?
So
really?
that was what was one to
I only heard very small sheep.
Yes.
Lambs.
Sausage dogs.
Tiny,
Sausage
tiny
dogs are
sheep.
ferocious. They can't heard anything. They're so noisy as well.
All right. OK, where are we going to next? Oh, plastic surgery. Let's talk about that.
Let's go to Brazilian butt lift.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this
Did you
is actually...
ever have a butt lift?
I don't need one.
No, I know. No, I'm asking you, when you think of the pain of it and whatever, but I know a very prominent woman in this business who's had her buttocks lifted.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do I know
The word
her?
being prominent,
You know her too. You know her too. And they're very firm and very tight now. And, you know, I just wonder, would you go
Older
through...
or younger than me?
Oh, older.
Oh.
Yeah, because you have to be older than you for it to sag. You know, would you have your buttocks lifted?
No, sagging's going to happen anyway. Just, like, let it happen. You've got to accept it.
Yeah.
It's not, but people don't. Not enough people see my bum that it would matter. I'd rather get everything else done. Get everything dragged up. Get everything dragged up. I need more hair.
Well,
get rid of
Turkey's the go-to destination for those things
getting
now.
it done there.
Yeah, well, in particular, this is a Turkish so-called medical firm called Magic Touch Turkey, which has been responsible for some deaths of its clients through various procedures. And they're offering these kind of cut-price Christmas vouchers for people to go out and get Brazilian butt lifts and a whole range of other surgeries. I mean, I understand that at this time of year, sometimes people think, I'm going to treat myself or somebody is going to buy me some kind of procedure, but you've really got to be so rigorous about how you go about checking these companies out. This was an event in Hull, this Magic Touch event in Hull. You know, they know very much what they're doing. It's a huge sales operation in the UK. They're directly appealing to UK consumers. And I just think if you really want to go get one of these things done, please research it thoroughly. At least go on Trustpilot.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's been going quite a long time, like plastic surgery for Christmas, boob jobs for Christmas.
Yeah.
They give offers, they send vouchers. You can buy something like a £500 voucher and then they've got to then spend the rest of the thousands themselves.
Oh, right.
And there's quite a lot of inducements to try and get people to do them.
You get a discount if
but as Nick was
Mummy
saying,
glow up.
people just get the cheapest one that they can afford and they don't think about the consequences at all.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to see icebergs up close.
Oh, right. I wasn't sure
I wondered where that was going to.
I haven't seen a butt lift yet, no. But I've seen icebergs and I've heard icebergs breaking and the colour of an iceberg. An iceberg is, I'll tell you what colour an iceberg is. It's exactly that colour of blue there. It's
No one can see that. Shall I hold it up?
It's an advert, but...
If you've seen Titanic, you've seen an iceberg.
The colour of your eyes.
No,
Eamonn.
you haven't. An iceberg is that colour. Don't know if we can see this. It's that colour of blue. It's that colour of blue when the white bit breaks off, and the noise of an iceberg splitting is immense. But a fantastic thing to have witnessed. Nikki, so tell us about this big iceberg.
Yeah, so this is a huge iceberg known as A23A, which I think is a bit of a rubbish name, couldn't they? Yes. Given it something a bit more glamorous. It was once attached to an ice shelf in West Antarctica, south of Chile, but it now sort of hangs about in the sea because it's frozen all the way down.
But what size is it?
It's 3 times the size of New York City, which is just kind of boggling, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
it's quite frightening as well, though.
Quite frightening. It broke off nearly 40 years ago, though, so it isn't a kind of direct new
What? It's been
result
floating
of...
for 40 years?
Well, it's, yeah, kind of bobbing around, but is frozen all the way down.
My word.
Yes. Remarkable, isn't it? So,
yeah. So it hasn't melted in 40 years. So there's me thinking, I was watching a report this week on islands off the coast of Australia that are going to be swamped by rising sea levels as well. But
there's that blue you were talking about.
There's that blue. You're absolutely right, Isabel. That's that blue. That's exactly. I hope I described that right. But it is a magnificent thing to see. But Nikki, I'm amazed that has been an entity on its own in its own right for 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, when we hear so much about global warming and all the icebergs are melting and, you know, sea levels rising and all the rest of it, but this one is steadfast, apparently. Very beautiful too.
They'll be putting KFCs on there. They'll be deporting Rwandan refugees out there if we can't get a policy.
Absolutely.
Presenting live from the iceberg.
Don't give them
Eamonn and
ideas.
Isabel.
Well, imagine if you're a little polar bear and your iceberg breaks off.
Yeah.
And then you're isolated on this iceberg 3 times the size of New York City.
But they can swim, can't they? So
Of course they can.
They could just jump off and swim round.
Fair. All right, I won't worry too much for the little...
No, I wouldn't.
...little things.
Oh. Meanwhile, how isolated will Boris Johnson be? The COVID inquiry, which sits just around the corner from where we are here today. How long have we got here?
50
Oh,
seconds.
we'll not bother talking about that then. Right, OK, we're going to
talk about that in a little bit.
45 seconds on the break, but... yeah, all of that was very good, guys. So Nikki Hodgson and Andy Jones will be back in about 40 minutes' time with more stories that hopefully will interest you.
But for now, we're going to take a look at the weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a dry and bright day for many of us, but it still feel rather cold after the chilly start. But later on, we'll see some rain arriving in the west. Now, there's an ice warning in force still through the morning across northeastern areas of Scotland. And elsewhere, though, we'll see plenty of dry and clear weather through much of the day. Any freezing fog should slowly lift and clear further south and west, but the sunshine will start to turn a little bit hazier across western parts of the UK, and rain will arrive into Northern Ireland. Temperatures will start to rise, though, highs of 12 degrees in the Scilly Isles later, still feeling very cold in the east, however, despite the sunshine. And then that rain through tonight will push further east. We've got weather warnings in force for parts of Northern Ireland overnight, and then tomorrow morning into parts of the southwest of the UK. That could bring some hill snow to parts of the Pennines and Scotland for a time, but mostly we'll be seeing a lot of heavy rain. Temperatures as a result will slowly start to rise, so there's much less of a risk of a frost through tonight. And then through Thursday, the rain really does continue, so quite a damp, cloudy day, and with weather warnings in force through much of the day across parts of Scotland and these western areas. Many of us will see rain on and off throughout the day. There could be water lingering on the roads as well, so do take care if you're travelling throughout Thursday. Later on, though, in the west, we will see the sunshine return and temperatures rising into double digits for many of us. I'll see you later.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, good to see you. 8 o'clock is the time. It's a Wednesday morning, the 6th of December, wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening. This is Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel on GB News.
And you're very welcome. Here's what's leading the news this morning. We're on resignation watch. Political pressure is piling up from both wings now of the Conservative Party over the government's newly signed treaty with Rwanda. Catherine Forster is across all the details for us this morning.
Yes, huge divisions within the Conservative Party. Ministers on resignation watch. But James Cleverly's new deal with Rwanda and legislation coming in the coming days. Can the government finally get people on a flight to Rwanda?
The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to defend his handling of the pandemic during a two-day grilling at the COVID inquiry today.
A show of royal unity at Buckingham Palace last night as Prince Harry's legal woes at the High Court continue again today. We'll be chatting to the former head of Royal Security, Di Davis, shortly.
Nigel Farage now one step closer to the jungle crown as he survives another elimination. He certainly knows how to celebrate, and we'll show you that celebration. Don't miss it.
And Paul Coit knows how to celebrate as well. He's here with your sport.
I do, but Arsenal...
Shirt on.
With my shirt on, but Arsenal do as well. They go 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League after a last-minute win at Luton Town. In the Women's Nation League, well, England thrashed Scotland, but it's not enough to save Team GB going into the Olympics. And in French football, Taylor Swift could get Lyon relegated.
When you say Arsenal won last minute, how last minute was
97th.
That's ridiculous.
97.
That's ridiculous.
And it was 6 minutes added on, by the way.
I sit at a football match and I think I've got a train to catch, I've got a car park to get out of, I've got to do lots of... I don't want 97 minutes.
You know, you want 90 and that's the end of it?
I want 90 minutes. And that's the way it...
Fergie time, Eamonn, Fergie time?
Well, OK, maybe. The forecast, we go to Annie Shuttleworth. She's a ray of sunshine for you this morning.
Good morning. Many of us will have woken up to some crisp winter scenes, but there's rain in the forecast by the end of the day for some of us. You can find out more with me a little bit later on.
Have you seen any comments coming in?
Lots of comments coming in on litter.
Oh, litter, right. What are people saying about litter?
Well, basically saying people used to take pride in this country and we need another Keep It Tidy campaign, and thinking it's a great idea that we get behind it. So we're all for it.
We are all for that.
I feel that coming on.
We should spearhead that on this channel for the new year.
I agree.
Yeah,
Get Britain tidy.
Just get Britain. Great Britain is a tidy Britain.
Britain great again.
But I do think, you know, when they say cleanliness is next to godliness. I do believe that cleanliness is a feel-good thing. If you're clean, it's good. It's good. It's a good thing to be. It's a good experience to have. Because when you think of things that are dirty and filthy and ghastly and polluting and need fumigated,
you think of the devil.
I just think it's a bad thing.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think of the devil. He's got enough fire to fumigate whatever he wants. GBViews at gbnews.com or tweet at GBnews. We've got little Christmassy things there, little stings.
Yeah, with snow.
A bus.
It's lovely.
Yeah,
snowy
very nice.
letterbox when you go to post your...
See, snow's clean as well.
Hopefully.
Snow looks very clean. Everything looks clean.
Stay away from yellow snow. I actually had a snowball in my face on Sunday.
Where? What?
From the Devil's Punch Bowl, which is a beauty spot in Surrey. There was snow on the ground and my son picked up some snow, short range, straight in the eye.
That about sums William up. Yes. There we go.
Really nice. Hopefully it wasn't yellow snow.
Right, the Home Secretary... Yes, yellow snow.
That would give me an eye infection like yours.
Yeah. Yellow snow.
I've got the giggles again.
But you used to get ice and you would put flavours on it. You get
like
sort of, and
like
you suck the flavour, like a slushy, exactly.
That's
different. That's different.
Yeah, that's acceptable.
Although you put me off the yellow one. The Home Secretary has signed a new treaty with Rwanda, and this is a bid to curb Britain's growing illegal migration numbers.
Well, the government have pressed ahead with their Rwanda plans, despite the Supreme Court ruling only last month that it was unlawful.
James Cleverly has said this new treaty will address all the issues. However, he may have a tougher sell with some of his colleagues.
Yeah, the Telegraph this morning is reporting that Rishi Sunak is facing up to 10 ministers quitting if he adopts a hardline approach on Rwanda, the so-called full-fat version, using emergency legislation to circumvent the European Convention on Human Rights.
Last night, dozens of backbenchers from the European Research Group, the Common Sense Group and the New Conservatives set up a Brexit-style gathering of legal experts to establish whether the new treaty would facilitate flights to the country. We spoke to the Police Minister, Chris Philp, about the plan.
Well, we hope it'll take off as soon as possible. I certainly hope by spring. The Home Secretary did a great job yesterday, flying out to Kigali, getting that treaty signed, addressing the issues that were raised by the Supreme Court. We've now got a treaty that is binding in international law. It guarantees that no one the UK sends over to Rwanda can be sent off anywhere else afterwards, which is one of the issues the Supreme Court in their judgment raised. So this should deal with all the issues which the judgment brought to the fore and should pave the way to flights getting off, as you say.
Lots of possible caveats there. As the fight over Rwanda heats up again, our GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster has been breaking down all the details of what the treaty actually means.
Yes, so Rishi Sunak and the Home Secretary treading a really fine line with these plans to get people to Rwanda. People on the right of the party very unhappy, meeting last night, and 10 ministers on resignation watch if they go, as they feel, too far the other way. So very, very difficult. But James Cleverly in Kigali yesterday signing this new treaty with Rwanda and sounding pretty confident. Let's have a little look at what he had to say yesterday.
See no reasons why there should be any more impairments to doing the right thing to break the business model of these people smuggling gangs and for the humane and professional treatment of refugees that Rwanda is offering.
So let's take a look at the specifics of what has been agreed. The main thing, the thing that blocked their attempts previously, the Supreme Court said Rwanda was not considered a safe country, was the possibility of asylum seekers being sent back to their country of origin, potentially being at risk. Now, this treaty guarantees that people being sent to Rwanda will not be sent back to their home country or another third country, with a few exceptions. Some, if they're convicted of crimes in Rwanda, might be sent back to the United Kingdom. On top of that, there's a new appeal body, judges from Britain and the Commonwealth, to sit on very exceptional cases, and also an independent monitoring committee which will be enhanced, and British experts are being sent out to help with the processing of asylum claims. So let's see what happens. This is one part of what the government's doing. The other part is legislation they're going to bring before Parliament in the coming days to disapply or ignore potentially any judgment that Rwanda is not a safe country. We will get the details of that later, but I think worth bearing in mind that £140 million has already been spent on this plan. The government has sent 3 Home Secretaries now to the country, but not a single asylum seeker. And, Suella Braverman, the previous Home Secretary, said that it was her dream to see a plane load of illegal migrants be sent on a one-way ticket to Rwanda. But will that ever become a reality?
OK, Catherine, thank you very much indeed.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson is expected to admit he made mistakes during the pandemic. He's appearing before the COVID inquiry today.
The former Prime Minister will, however, argue that his government got the big decisions right. The Times newspaper today claiming that he'll say he helped save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives by preventing the NHS from being overwhelmed.
And let's go to Pip Thompson, who's there reporting for us today. Pip, what have you got to tell us?
Eamonn, combative or contrite, apologetic or appealing for understanding. That is what people will be wanting to hear from Boris Johnson during his 2 days of evidence. He got here exceedingly early. I think we can show you the pictures. He arrived at this COVID inquiry at 7 o'clock this morning, 3 hours ahead of when he is due to give evidence. And then in the last hour or so, although they weren't here when he arrived, there obviously have been families of the bereaved turning up, standing outside. And in the last few moments, I think we can show you a truck has just pulled up. You can also see how busy it is with all the media interest here. A truck has pulled up saying the bodies did pile high. That is an allegation regarding what Boris Johnson said during the pandemic. Now, he's already submitted a 200-page witness statement. He spent a lot of time listening, as we all have, to the testimony of others, the damning testimony and criticism of others in some cases. Witnesses so far have claimed that Boris Johnson ruled over a chaotic and dysfunctional government. He was also compared by Dominic Cummings to a shopping trolley because he veered all over the place when making his decisions. And then at the end of last month, his former chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, had this to say about Boris Johnson.
Well, I think I'm right in saying that the Prime Minister at the time gave up science when he was 15. and I think he'd be the first to admit it wasn't his forte, and that he did struggle with some of the concepts, and we did need to repeat them often. Certainly when I left a meeting, I would usually be persuaded that we had got him to understand what it was we were trying to say. But as one of the extracts showed that you put up there, that 6 hours later he might not have remembered what was in that presentation.
So Sir Patrick Vallance claimed Boris Johnson was bamboozled by the science. That is something that he will be expected to deny when he is questioned under the microscope by leading counsel to the inquiry, Hugo Keith KC. You will have heard a lot from him already. What is Boris Johnson going to be asked? Well, one of the leading questions will be about the timing of lockdown. Matt Hancock, the former health secretary, said last week that the UK should have locked down 3 weeks earlier because it could have saved many, many lives. People weren't ordered to stay at home, were they, until Monday, March the 23rd. And back at the start of the pandemic, you might remember Boris Johnson was asked whether he was still shaking hands with people. And this at the time is what he said.
Tell you that I'm shaking hands continuously. I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody. You'll be pleased to know, and I continue to shake hands. And I think it's very important that we, people obviously can make up their own minds. I think that Matt has said that people must make up their own minds, but I think the scientific evidence is, well, I'll hand over to the experts, but our judgment is wash. Washing your hands is the crucial thing.
Something else Boris Johnson will be quizzed about is his attitude. Was it really callous? Was it really chaotic? Did he really say, as Dominic Cummings claimed, let the bodies pile high? And as Sir Patrick Vallance claimed, he said COVID is nature's way of dealing with old people. And then, of course, there is Dominic Cummings himself, who gave that incendiary evidence a few weeks ago. We've heard a lot about the power he wielded in Number 10. Indeed, Sajid Javid, who was Chancellor at the start of the pandemic, he said that it was Dominic Cummings making the decisions. Sajid Javid claims he was driven to resign because of Dominic Cummings. And then there was why Boris Johnson resisted calls to get rid of former Health Secretary Matt Hancock. Also, the toxic culture which we heard existed within Downing Street. Former Deputy Cabinet Secretary Helen McNamara said Downing Street under Boris Johnson was sexist, toxic and awful. And also, we can't forget, can we, Partygate, that undermined public confidence in lockdown rules. But Boris Johnson does have his defenders. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, said that lockdown went against his instincts. And many people are questioning this inquiry in the first place, saying it's asking completely the wrong questions. Well, you'll be able to see more of this. The inquiry with Boris Johnson starts at 10 o'clock.
Well, thank you very much indeed. More than quite interesting to see that he has gone in 3 hours before he's due to appear. For a man that's not noted for attention to detail or knowing his brief, he's certainly preparing himself for the next 2 days.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and it's been reported in some of the papers that he's actually going to bounce the questions back at the inquiry and say actually he thinks the inquiry should be looking at the harms of lockdown. And certainly I do think there is that conversation to be had, because everyone's saying that this inquiry is taking the assumption as given, basically, that actually we should learn and we locked down too late. But, there have been so many ramifications with hospital appointments and cancer and mental health and children's and schools. It is strange that isn't part of the inquiry's remit.
Well, with the time at 8:15, let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into our newsroom this morning. And a 28-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder following the stabbing of a 29-year-old woman in Aberfan, South Wales. A pregnant woman was subjected to a knife attack yesterday morning. The victim was taken to hospital and is believed to be stable.
Junior doctors in England are set to stage the longest strike in NHS history after talks on an improved pay deal with the government broke down. Ministers and the British Medical Association have been locked in negotiations for 5 weeks, trying to find a resolution to the dispute. The first walkouts are due to start across England from 7 a.m. on the 20th of December.
And if you're heading off for work this morning, prepare for commuter chaos. Some of the busiest rail routes in the country will have a limited service or no trains at all. Members of ASLEF Union at South Western Railway, Southern, South Eastern, Gatwick Express and the Isle of Wight's Island Line will walk out for 24 hours. This is the latest in a series of stoppages this week.
Tell you what, though, didn't we know it yesterday?
We knew it, and it's funny you talk about, you think, well, you know, OK, you'll not get anywhere in a train, but then the people who would normally be using a train have got to use other forms of transport or take to the roads. And what Isabel's referring to is that it took us 3.5 hours,
It took me 4 hours, because I then had to get home from your house after that. So 4 hours, a journey that would normally take an hour. We just sat in gridlock, didn't we?
It was...
Nose to bumper.
Yes, it actually began to lose the will to live.
I did as well, and that was just because you had another 4 hours with me. We'd already done 4 hours here together.
Well, I like
That's a day together.
You like to get home before you go to bed, have something to eat and unwind for a bit.
Yeah,
but
there's no time.
There was no time, and I sat down and I started to watch something on TV, and then I was asleep.
Yeah.
I thought I woke up 3 hours later. But it was terrible, the traffic.
It was absolutely terrible, and obviously it's a really busy time of year, so the train drivers with the strike, they know exactly what they're doing. Lots of people go for their Christmas shopping and their school trips up to see shows, the West End, and honestly, you could not move in the capital yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, this is happening in other places besides London as well, but no, it was not good. It's not good. Didn't enjoy that at all.
But
what?
Perhaps you enjoyed this last night. Well, yeah, that's the theme tune to I'm a Celebrity, but the theme tune that Nigel Farage was getting down to
was?
Well, our reporter on the Gold Coast, Adam Cherry, will tell you more.
Good morning, guys. Good afternoon from the Gold Coast here in sunny Australia. The big news overnight is, yes, Nigel Farage has survived another day in the jungle. So the Vote Remain campaign lives on for yet another day. Of course, that's not the only big news coming out of last night. We have to talk about this, and we are going to show you the clip. If you haven't seen it already, brace yourselves. This is Nigel singing I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt in the Jungle Arms last night. Take a look at this, if you dare.
I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love. Love's going to leave me.
We were also given the delight of Nigel Farage. I'm too sexy for my shirt.
Sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts.
I do know the Fairbrass brothers that produced that hit. You know, I'm too sexy for my shirt. You've got to get your shirt off.
Vote for Nigel again tonight. Make sure you do. Hashtag Vote Remain. Back to you guys. Cheers.
Oh, it's the dad dancing that makes me giggle / cringe. It's like the hopping about. Oh, I mean, you know, we've seen his bottom now. We've seen his torso. There's not a lot left to the imagination with Nigel Farage in the jungle, is there?
He's still there. He's still chugging along, it has to be said. And you can vote for him 5 times a day, we're told.
Crikey.
Vote early, vote often. Here's your weather update. Let's get a dose of that.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a dry and bright day for many of us, but it still feels rather cold after the chilly start. But later on, we'll see some rain arriving in the west. Now, there's an ice warning in force still through the morning across northeastern areas of Scotland. And elsewhere, though, we'll see plenty of dry and clear weather through much of the day. Any freezing fog should slowly lift and clear further south and west, but the sunshine will start to turn a little bit hazier across western parts of the UK, and rain will arrive into Northern Ireland. Temperatures will start to rise, though, highs of 12 degrees in the Scilly Isles later, still feeling very cold in the east, however, despite the sunshine. And then that rain through tonight will push further east. We've got weather warnings in force for parts of Northern Ireland overnight, and then tomorrow morning into parts of the southwest of the UK. That could bring some hill snow to parts of the Pennines and Scotland for a time, but mostly we'll be seeing a lot of heavy rain. Temperatures as a result will slowly start to rise, so there's much less of a risk of a frost through tonight. And then through Thursday, the rain really does continue. So quite a damp, cloudy day, and with weather warnings in force through much of the day across parts of Scotland and these western areas. Many of us will see rain on and off throughout the day. There could be water lingering on the roads as well, so do take care if you're travelling throughout Thursday. Later on, though, in the west, we will see the sunshine return and temperatures rising into double digits for many of us. I'll see you later.
Still to come, Prince Harry's security case is back in court again today. We'll be speaking to the former head of Royal Security, Di Davies, next.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Royal matters now, and the King was joined by the Queen, Prince William, Princess Catherine. This was at a Buckingham Palace reception last night. Very posh. A lot of...
Because I don't think they ever do Buckingham Palace receptions that aren't posh, do they?
No, you're right, yeah. But everybody was there. That wasn't last night, was it?
Lots of dignitaries. No, I don't think so.
It wasn't... No,
that was.
Yeah. But anyway, this is the start of the festive period for the royals. It's an annual gathering, and it welcomes people from the diplomatic corps. in the staterooms at Buckingham Palace.
Well, this obviously the timing of this really interesting, right slap bang in the middle of Prince Harry's High Court challenge. Unprecedented, as we were hearing earlier, for a member of the royal family to take on His Majesty's government. He's challenging the Home Office over his security protection when he visits the UK. The Duke of Sussex says that his security status has been downgraded after he stopped being a working royal.
Joining us now, the former head of Royal Protection, Di Davis. Di, the decision to downgrade his security status, I believe that's made by the Metropolitan Police. I believe that's a police call, nothing to do with the royal family, unless you'd care to correct me.
Well, I'm sorry, I would have to correct you. It's actually made by a Home Office committee for the protection of royals and very important people, so-called. So it is away from the decision-making of the Metropolitan Police. Clearly, it's the Royalty Protection Command that actually then carry out the protection, both of royals, senior royals, and ministers, the prime ministers, and other key figures in the government. So that's the issue here. But if I may say so, the whole case rests around what I regard as the best word in the English language, called reasonable. And what he says is that his treatment by this committee, one, he wasn't allowed to make representations, and two, their action consequently was unreasonable. That's the basis of this review as I understand it.
Now, that's how you understand it. Do you agree with it, Di? I mean, as a former head of royal security, do you think it was a reasonable assessment?
Well, yes, given the criteria, again, as I understand it, set for protecting royals, he stepped out of this nearly 4 years ago now, and as a consequence was no longer a working royal. What you have to take into account, irrespective of whether he is a working royal or not, what is the threat? What is the evidence? And again, it's not a science. Clearly, there are issues that affect him. And unfortunately, his own behavior in the last 3 or 4 years, frankly, has added to his own risk in one sense, because he can't keep his mouth shut. His version of truth is often at variance to what everybody else thinks of truth. So for somebody who wants privacy, he's certainly gone about it the wrong way if he's so fearful as to his security. So I would respect it, but I would go on evidence vis-a-vis any other criteria for protecting him and indeed his family.
Di, is he fair to be even more concerned, though? I mean, given that he named or numbered the number of Taliban that he'd killed whilst serving in active duty in Afghanistan, I mean, that will make him a bit more of a target, won't it? And he is already in line to the throne, so he does have legitimate security concerns, and it's a difficult job as well, you know, to keep these people safe.
Well, yes, and that's why the committee have decided that on a basis-to-basis, case-to-case event, when he deems to honour us with his person in this country, in other words, we're all very honourable when he does come back, that we should provide armed protection. He does get unarmed protection because he has former royalty protection officers who actually accompany him now. He's paying for those. His criteria is he should have Metropolitan Police armed protection. Well, again, one has to take this case by case because, unfortunately, we've never had precedent for this. So the judge will decide whether, in all the circumstances, it is reasonable that you and I pay what is very, very expensive officers to actually protect him. But I say again, as a principle, you have a duty to, as it were, help yourself. With great respect, he's got 4 cases now going against various bodies, including the Mirror, the Mail, and all the rest of it. For somebody who's so conscious as to his security, he certainly has a strange way of going about it. And as I say, he wants armed protection. Well, the truth is, historically, the number of incidents where the Metropolitan Police have had to draw firearms in protection is so rare, it goes off the scale. The last real attempt was Princess Anne when she was almost kidnapped in the Mall. And you've had one or two imitation firearms. Yes, in Northern Ireland and other places, you've had people try and attack the royals when they go there. And that his great-great-uncle was obviously bombed. But yes, attacks do take place. But you have to make a balanced risk. If you look in America, that's where he lives. The crime rate and the violence rate is so out of scale to the UK, even without all of this.
Di, let me ask you. You talk about America, and he obviously pays for armed protection there. You say he gets unarmed protection here. Is it possible that you can upgrade that and you can pay from the Met? You can pay the Met to have armed protection?
No, you can't. It would be setting a very bad precedent, because if you give it to Harry or anyone like Harry of his status, where do you stop? And there's a finite number of officers, men and women, who, in my opinion, are exceptional. They are great people. They do a hell of a good job, and they keep people safe. And we do it uniquely in the British way, without shaven heads and all the rest of it. But yes, it's a balance. And the word reasonable, and that's what the judge will decide on, presumably, the evidence put forward. What is interesting also, just if I say, he says that two members of that committee, as I understand it, were prejudiced against him. And therefore there was an issue as to whether he was treated fairly. I don't know, you don't know, and the rest of us don't know, because most of this will be held in secret. But it's a balance, as I say, and hopefully common sense will apply.
Well, thank you very much
common
indeed.
sense applies from you, Di Davis. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks. Di is a former head of Royal Security. Thank you very much indeed. And we do it all without shaven heads. That way we do the sport.
It is very
similar.
similar.
Do the sport the same way. That's what I said. I said, I'm not having anybody with shaven head.
Unarmed as well, by the way, as well.
Yeah.
7-goal thriller we had yesterday.
Okay.
7-goal thriller. Luton and Arsenal. Arsenal go to the Kenilworth Road, and it was a hell of a game. It really was. Luton went 3-2 up, then Arsenal came back, and so then you had 30 minutes where nothing happens. But all great teams seem to do this, don't they? Score late, and that's what Arsenal did. 97th minute.
Who's got time for that?
I know. Well, I didn't, because it was far too late for me. I've got to get up, so I have to watch it all in the morning, and then so I watched it this morning. But 97th minute. Liverpool did it to Luton as well, and anyway, Arsenal 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League.
There must have been some atmosphere though there last night.
It's a great place to go. Everybody wants to go, and it's interesting that any fan that goes, I've done it, and I know there are a lot of Arsenal fans that did it yesterday. It's the same picture going up in the stand, looking down through. Yeah. I feel for these people whose houses are just behind there, because every fan is taking a photograph through their bathroom window.
You wouldn't believe just the way it's built, the way it's constructed.
That's right.
I don't know how it ever got to the way it is, but it is amazing that people's homes are just built around the ground.
Well, someone like you would love
incredible.
that if it was the
well, I don't know if I would
Old
love
Trafford.
that. Well, yeah.
Yes, you would.
Well, match day and not noise and that.
I often do that, walking into a ground. I think, if only I lived here. It'd be great to step out, have a cup of tea, straight in.
Say you live beside Wembley Arena or something like that. Must be awful.
Yeah, but heaven forbid either of you were single. You know, as a single man and a football fan,
right?
A great place.
And a fan of Dancing on Ice. I mean, or the Disney on Ice or whatever they do at Wembley.
Not Wembley.
All the different things.
Yeah, but then you get all the concerts.
Yeah.
Not
but
for you.
I mean, to go to your ground, to go to your place of worship is
exactly.
It's all part of this, the journey.
It is, of course it is. Of course it is. It's the walk in, and then you feel the atmosphere. You think of going with your dad back in the day as a kid, walking through. Well, we better sort that out very soon.
Was that the old White Hart Lane? That was a dump.
It was not. It was. Honestly, did you see me? I went like this.
I know.
I can't believe I nearly put one on Eamonn Holmes. I can't. Listen, tonight, Wolves beat Burnley, and so tonight some great games. Brighton-Brentford prediction. Brighton-Brentford.
Brighton-Brentford. Oh,
I go with Brentford.
You going with Brentford?
Yeah.
I could
could well be.
Isabel, on that. Sorry, no, is it at Brighton?
It's at Brighton.
Oh, no, it's Brighton.
It's Brighton.
Yeah, Brighton.
Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, Fulham Forest, Sheffield United, Liverpool. How about this one? So Aston Villa, 100% so far at Villa Park. Man City drawn 3 on the bounce. Do Aston Villa beat Man City tonight?
No.
Emery's a good manager, really good manager.
I'm going with Man City.
Are you going with Man City?
I'm going with the Angry Viking.
The away win. going with the away win and Erling Haaland.
It's hard.
Another draw?
It's hard to vote against them. Yeah.
Yeah. And Manchester United, Chelsea, which is the huge game for you tonight.
Well, that's 3 points.
Oh dear.
Home 3 points.
Oh, home 3 points. I'm glad to hear you say
you've got a friend playing in that, haven't you? It's exciting.
Yes. That's secret information.
I'm sorry, but no one knows. But it's exciting.
Are you mates for Marcus Rashford again? Are you back on again? Is that all right?
Oh, never mind. Don't go.
It's just an insight into the phone calls inside Amy Holmes' car.
Oh, I want to know more.
3.5 hours.
All the unrest that's going on at Manchester United, Eric Ten Hag, and they had banned journalists going in there that had written, they call lies.
They've drawn a lot of enemies with the newspapers today.
They have.
They've not taken kindly to this. I mean, Fergie got away with that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like in today's age, but it's not Fergie they're dealing with now. Fergie was scary. When Fergie banned you from his...
I can imagine.
I remember once he called me over early when I met him. This was 1987 or so. And he said to me, "Oh, you." And he called me over and I thought, oh, what have I done wrong here? And he says, "I want to say something to you." And I'm thinking, I'm going to get it here.
Yeah.
And I was with the BBC then on Sport. And he said, you're the only one in that BBC who are not anti-United. And he went through the names and he was right. And he said, they're all Liverpool supporters. And he went through them all and he was right.
But you are a Manchester United fan.
The form
and you've made
of
up for it ever since.
All that sort of thing,
Biased output for years ever since.
So that was me and him.
So I don't know whether Ten Hag's going to feel the same way, because the thing is, he's banned... and the club are saying, well, the problem is that it was in the papers yesterday that things were written about fallout, that the team aren't trusting Ten Hag, and they said they never had any right to reply. So that's the reason they banned them. But you can't be doing that. Quick word?
No
more words.
How quick?
Oh, I've missed it.
It couldn't be quick. No,
there it is.
We have to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
You've had enough. I think you've been a bit greedy.
Oh, do you think so?
Yes, I think you've had enough time this morning.
Yeah.
And
I'll not forget that and what you said about White Hart Lane. It'll always be there.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And we say hello to Father Christmas. He's gone to Jerusalem to preach for peace, and we'll be discussing that and more in Headbite Makers next. Oh, look at that.
On a camel,
for goodness sake.
Doesn't...
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is the season of goodwill, and we are joined one last time to go through the headline makers this morning with Nikki Hodgson and Andy Jones. And Nikki, just tell us exactly how this message is being spread this Christmas.
Well, in the Ho-Ho Holy Land...
Oh, very good.
There's a Santa, a Jerusalem Santa, and he's spreading peace and love, riding around on a camel through the olive groves, overlooking the old city. He's actually Jerusalem's only official Santa. He trained at a special Santa school in Colorado and then went to a Santa finishing school in New York. And, yeah, here he is. Apparently he does this every year. He's actually a basketball coach by day. But come Christmas time, he dons the outfit, hops on his camel and tries to cheer everybody up.
I mean, and very impressive looking that is, but you just wonder, you know, how many people can really celebrate Christmas there.
Well, absolutely.
Not only from a religious point of view, but from a political point of view, the war and everything going on there. I wonder, a lot of people just won't be in the mood, will they, for Christmas?
Or maybe Christmas could be, you know...
Well, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because lots of people
They'll not be celebrated in Gaza, will they?
No.
Or Israel, really.
Well, I suppose in Jerusalem people go to the Church of the Nativity, don't they? It's actually a popular thing to do. But it's quite a tense time, and it's always a tense time in Jerusalem if you've been. It's a stressful place to visit.
Yes.
And, yeah, Christmas is always troublesome because there often are, I don't know, little wranglings. There's always an Israeli diplomat I know. I went to Israel once and he said to me, you know, a war starts when someone kicks a stone. And obviously far more has gone on in recent months than that. So, yeah, I take your point, Eamonn. I hope that it's spreading good cheer, but, you know, you never know if it's kind of going to have the opposite effect either.
No. I'm quite interested this man did a finishing school for Santa in Colorado and New York.
Yeah.
It's quite a racket getting qualified as a Santa.
I think there might be young ears around, so I think the less said about that, the better.
OK, all right, obviously he does exist, but his official partners clearly have to do a lot of work to get degrees in Santa skills.
Santa school.
Let's talk about no, sorry, we're talking about agency nurses. Now, I mean, I've got a view on this, and I think there is a difference in the standard of care and the continuity of care. I'm having experienced this myself over the past year in hospital. Far too many agency nurses. I understand why they're there, Andy, but there is an accusation here that they cost too much.
Yes, NHS accused of squandering, this is in the Times, it's in the Telegraph, it's everywhere else, 3 billion quid on agency and support staff from 2020 onwards. It was £1.3 billion last year, according to the Telegraph. The doctor strikes, which have been going on throughout the year as well, has also cost us around £1 billion. Agency staff been used there in place. But the other thing is, how many nurses did we get rid of because they wouldn't get the jab? I mean, wasn't it around 50,000 nurses at one point that weren't going to get the COVID jab, and many of those were laid off or forced to get the jab? I think with this sort of problem is we lean so much on agency staff, one, to cover gaps, but also it goes on different spreadsheets and it doesn't necessarily come out of the same part of the budget, and they can pretend that they're cutting costs, even though, in real terms, pounds, it's costing us even more.
And there are serious worries that some of the measures addressed to tackle legal migration, which everybody agrees is too high, will probably affect disproportionately this sector, and possibly, given the amount that's being spent on agency staff, well, that is likely to increase. Is there suddenly all these foreigners not being allowed to bring in their loved ones to this country as part of the plan?
Well, that's the irony. You know, we talk incessantly about the stress on the NHS because of immigration, but the fact is the NHS is also propped up by immigrants who do an incredible job working for us. And it's sort of, you know, taking away with one hand, well, you know, giving with one hand, taking away with the other.
Totally.
It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
If you ever have any stay in a hospital and you see the amount of Filipino nursing staff, the amount of Indian nursing staff, the amount of West Indian
And
nursing
doctors.
staff, African nursing staff as well, it's absolutely incredible. It's almost totally reliant on them.
You're quite right, but a lot of the perhaps newer wave of migrants from certainly what I've seen in refugee camps in Calais and Africa are young sort of 20 to 30 something males who are coming from patriarchal societies where they're not going to be wanting to come and do care work or nursing work or etc. etc. But the other point I would make is these agency staff, they can't, you're losing the specialist nurses who would know intimately a ward, who would intimately know specific areas of care. And I'm sure these agency staff are very good at their job, but it can't be easy if you're parachuted into work sort of 3 weeks, 4 weeks somewhere, and mistakes are made where with handovers, gaps aren't covered, etc.
And it affects how people work in a team. You know, if you work with somebody for a couple of weeks, you never see them again. Like you say, there's no continuity.
Definitely no continuity, and there's definitely a resentment, I would say, in what the agency staff are being paid as opposed to what the staffers are on.
There's a mice story in the Telegraph today, Nikki. I have to confess, I've had some mice in my house lately, and we've had the dilemma of what to do about it.
You have a cat.
Well, yes. Once he's allowed in other parts of the house, he'll sort it out, I'm sure. But you know, the humane traps and all the rest of it, and then you start realising, actually, they're pretty intelligent.
Yes.
So what's this story saying?
So this is that mice may be self-aware after rodents have been found to pass the so-called mirror test. This means that when they look in the mirror, they recognise themselves.
Gosh. Seriously?
Yes, I mean, my dog doesn't recognise himself. I don't know about Maggie,
My
but...
cat doesn't.
No, but I watched a film on Instagram last night about a dog looking at itself in the mirror, and it could not come to terms with the image.
No. Oh, really? It was in denial
absolutely,
about...
it kept doing it, but it just kept fighting itself in the mirror.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a common thing with dogs, but apparently, mice are one of the only few animals, such as apes, dolphins and some birds, that can recognise themselves in the mirror. So obviously this now brings up loads of ethical issues for scientists who've spent so many years testing on them. If they're so much smarter than we think, does that mean that they're suffering more as a result of our testing?
But also, when they see themselves in the mirror, they notice things like their whiskers are askew or they've got crumbs on their face and they clean themselves up.
Yeah.
So maybe leave some wet wipes out for them, some cotton pads.
But in all seriousness, you know, mouse traps are horrid.
They are horrible,
Some people have those sticky tape ones.
Oh, they're the worst.
And you can just hear them screaming. We would never use those, but my husband's office that he used to work in had them. And they were all sitting around in the office. They could just hear this mouse screaming in the corner of the
put it out of
room.
its misery.
Its little feet stuck to the...
Oh, it smells
I was filming once in a top London hotel. I mean, top end, 7-star.
Only the best for Eamonn.
I was filming.
He was
right?
filming. How the other half lived, probably.
But under the bed had complete sticky paper under the bed to catch mice.
No, I think you should just have a resident cat in a hotel.
Yeah.
Your cat needs, letting out probably, Isabel, because if they even know the cat's in the house, then that might deter them, and you might not have to do anything else after that.
So here's a story about GP receptionists given another job, another responsibility, and that is to spot signs with male patients or who may be at risk of suicide. Now, all of which is fine, but that sort of suggests, do women not commit suicide? I mean, I know that is the case that they do, but...
Yeah, I mean, the numbers tend to be higher for males aged between about 20 and 45. But I really take issue with this story, actually, because I used to be a medical secretary and had pretty much no training. You learn everything on the job. The only reason they gave me a job as a student was because I'd done Latin at school, so I might understand some of the terminology, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, to be honest. And I worked in NHS hospitals as well as surgeries. But the fact is that as a secretary, you're already spending half your time running around after doctors, getting letters signed off, making sure prescriptions are going through. You have a lot more responsibility than you might think. I mean, I don't know, working as a PA, but the fact that these, you know, these people are going to be expected to kind of almost diagnose whether somebody's at risk of suicide. I just think it's totally beyond the pale. Yeah. And it isn't a solution to the actual problem, which is chronic understaffing.
Yeah.
You know?
And they do this with pharmacists as well.
Yes,
it's like,
exactly.
oh, don't bother your doctor with it. Go to your pharmacist, dump everything on the pharmacist. Yep. The pharmacist will deal with it. And it's everything on the cheap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were chatting to Roman and Martin Kemp yesterday, and Roman's just been made Trick chairman or president this year, and he dedicated his year to a mental health charity because his producer on his show had committed suicide a couple of years ago. And I was chatting to his dad about it, and his dad said they had supper with him 2 nights before.
Wow, yeah.
No idea.
Laughing, happy as anything, and nobody had any idea. And they all wonder and question themselves, is there something I could have done? And to say to these receptionists that this pressure is going to be on them, if people closest to them couldn't even spot it.
And then if somebody does kill themselves, imagine the guilt and the sense of responsibility. You know, when doctors have patients die on them, they spend years training for that moment and they have all kinds of support. I just think this beggars belief. It's a terrible idea.
But training on any sort on mental health has to be a good thing.
I would say so, but also receptionists, you get so many calls at the GP surgery now. You haven't got time to assess whether people are in a good mood or bad mood. First of all, most people ringing up the GP are in a bad mood and ill and fed up anyway. Second of all, you can't really investigate more than what time do you want, what's wrong with you.
No.
There's no realm to sort of explore how are you feeling and how are things at home and are you feeling satisfied by your work and your wife or whatever. I don't know what he's supposed to say. I don't know. I think it is passing the buck. It's a nice idea, but I think again it's not proper mental health provision, is it?
No.
OK, let's finish with these 2 grandparents in their Wetherspoons pub.
Okay. Well, did you want to do MasterChef as your final?
Well, the Wetherspoons wise, it's just it's
up to you.
It's a madness. Do you want to do it? So Monica Galletti, the MasterChef professional judge, has bemoaned the quality of cookery programmes on TV, cookery dramas. For instance, The Bear, which is a drama about a troubled chef in Chicago, Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, portraying the very worst of our nation's kitchens and saying that the industry is much friendlier and nicer. It's not about throwing pans and abusing each other and having illicit affairs. Then she says, rather hopefully, I think, she says, why don't they instead talk about the sustainability of amazing ingredients that they work with and the farmers that have put this together
That'd be a good drama, wouldn't it?
Can you imagine? I mean, don't give the woke department at BBC any ideas. I mean, we'll have a chef scrambling around Europe looking for sustainable celeriac or fair trade chocolate, and it'll be on a knife edge as to whether they've passed muster.
I think she should probably stick to cooking and judging and not give the drama editors any advice. Because, that's not going to be the most entertaining programme, is it?
She says all our shows pick on the worst parts of the industry, which I kind of find annoying. But again, at least it's not boring.
I mean, what about the morning show? What do you 2 think of that? Is that like your lives?
It's, It's, matter of fact, it's too much like our lives.
It's not
and
fun to
I
watch.
don't find it. No, it's not fun to watch.
Everyone
quite
quotes it to us the whole time. But it's not. By the way, inbox is absolutely full of advice now. Peppermint spray, they say. They hate it. And apparently, Eamonn, the sticky tape under the beds to catch bed bugs.
No, it's not. I know what it was for. It's for mice and rats.
Well, there you go. That's you told.
OK, thank you, guys. You've been very entertaining this morning.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you. See you again soon. Here's the weather now with... can't remember her name. Annie Shuttleworth, thank you.
Of course it was.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a dry and bright day for many of us, but it still feel rather cold after the chilly start. But later on, we'll see some rain arriving in the west. Now, there's an ice warning in force still through the morning across northeastern areas of Scotland. And elsewhere, though, we'll see plenty of dry and clear weather through much of the day. Any freezing fog should slowly lift and clear further south and west, but the sunshine will start to turn a little bit hazier across western parts
parts of the UK, and rain will arrive into Northern Ireland. Temperatures will start to rise though, highs of 12 degrees in the Scilly Isles later, still feeling very cold in the east, however, despite the sunshine. And then that rain through tonight will push further east. We've got weather warnings in force for parts of Northern Ireland overnight, and then tomorrow morning into parts of the southwest of the UK. That could bring some hill snow to parts of the Pennines and Scotland for a time, but mostly we'll be seeing a lot of heavy rain. Temperatures as a result will slowly start to rise, so there's much less of a risk of a frost through tonight. And then through Thursday, the rain really does continue, so quite a damp, cloudy day, and with weather warnings in force through much of the day across parts of Scotland and these western areas. Many of us will see rain on and off throughout the day. There could be water lingering on the roads as well, so do take care if you're travelling throughout Thursday. Later on though in the west, we will see the sunshine return and temperatures rising into double digits for many of us. I'll see you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. It is just about to turn 9 o'clock on Wednesday, the 6th of December. You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel. And here's what's leading the news this morning. Resignation watch as the political pressure is piling up from both wings of the Conservative Party over the government's newly signed treaty with Rwanda. We spoke to Government Minister Chris Philp about this earlier on.
Well, we hope it'll take off as soon as possible. I certainly hope by spring. The Home Secretary did a great job yesterday, flying out to Kigali, getting that treaty signed, addressing the issues that were raised by the Supreme Court. We've now got a treaty that is binding in international law. It guarantees that no one the UK sends over to Rwanda can be sent off anywhere else afterwards, which is one of the issues the Supreme Court in their judgment raised. So this should deal with all the issues which the judgment brought to the fore and should pave the way to flights getting off, as you say.
In other news today, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to defend his handling of the pandemic during a two-day grilling at the COVID inquiry. Our Pip Thompson is there for us.
Boris Johnson arrived here at 7 o'clock this morning. Will he be contrite or combative, apologetic or appealing for understanding? We find out in bang on an hour's time.
A show of royal unity at Buckingham Palace last night as Prince Harry's legal woes at the High Court continue again today. And Nigel Farage is one step closer to the Jungle Crown as he survives another elimination down under, and he certainly knows how to celebrate.
I'm too sexy for my shirt. You've got to get your shirt off.
Not quite the weather for that sort of antics here in the UK. Let's take a look at the forecast now with Annie Shuttleworth.
Good morning. Many of us will have woken up to some crisp winter scenes, but there's rain in the forecast by the end of the day for some of us. You can find out more with me a little bit later on.
And keep your thoughts coming in for the next half hour. GBViews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBNews. So the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, signed a new treaty with Rwanda yesterday in a bid to curb the UK's growing illegal migration numbers. The government have pressed ahead with their Rwanda plans, despite the Supreme Court ruling only last month that it was unlawful. However, he may have a tougher sell at home now with some of his colleagues. The Telegraph this morning reporting that Rishi Sunak faces up to 10 of his ministers quitting if he adopts a hardline approach on Rwanda and uses emergency legislation to circumvent the European Convention on Human Rights. Well, Labour are placing the blame for the Rwanda crisis directly at the feet of government. We spoke to the Shadow Policing Minister, Alex Norris, about it earlier.
You know, last week alone, 1,000 people entered the channel and made that dangerous journey. What we're talking about with Rwanda is 100 people. So that's a tenth of last week alone. Never mind the, 150-odd thousand people we have waiting for decisions. So the idea that this scheme in some way will unlock all of our problems here, I think, is for the birds. I think the ministers should be using their time and money on more effective methods.
Well, that's what Labour thinks. Let's see what our political editor, Christopher Hope's thinking about it all this morning. Good morning to you, Christopher. Are we any closer to seeing those planes taking off, or are we just seeing an even deepening ravine within the Tory party?
The government insists it is going to see these first planes taking off in the spring next year. The spring means May. But the question is, will that happen at all or not? Right now, the place behind me, Parliament, Westminster, is on a knife edge because there could be some resignations either way. As many as 10 ministers on the One Nation side, the left of the party, could resign if the government comes forward with measures to try and withdraw in part from areas of the European Convention on Human Rights. But if it doesn't go hard enough, we could see someone like Robert Jenrick, who's the immigration minister, pushing for a tough line on migration. He could walk. It's a very, very difficult ledge to walk along. It wasn't discussed yesterday in Cabinet like we thought it might be. The treaty came out. That was signed by James Cleverly yesterday. It's in all today's papers. I'm being reported on GB News. The next thing is this legislation to allow those planes to take off as early as May next year. And will the government allow us to disapply, remove elements of the European Convention on Human Rights to allow us to stop judges stopping those flights taking off? It's a really, really difficult line to walk for the PM. We are expecting to see this bill published probably tomorrow, and big votes next week. This weekend will be immense, with lots of MPs talking either way about what they will do about it. We also do know, of course, we've got the Common Sense group of Tory MPs, the ERG, remember them from the Brexit days, and the New Conservatives group. They've established their own group of lawyers who are going over this, the treaty published last night, to see whether it can actually work, and gets the green light from them. If not, it may lack support to even get through the Commons. We're yet again a kind of crisis emerging over immigration. To be fair to the government, they're trying to do something. This Rwanda plan is an idea. It's being played down by James Cleverly as a silver bullet, but they're hoping it might work. Labour, for its part, hasn't got an answer at all, really. And indeed, if you ask them about net migration, they haven't got an answer on even cutting it. They won't even say if they're going to support James Cleverly's 5-point plan to remove that legal number down by 300,000 to around 360,000 or so. So it's a difficult nettle to grasp, but as we do know from this government, they are trying to grasp them.
Yeah, a middle ground has been quoted in some of the papers this morning that Sunak's trying to find between these now two angry factions. One of the details, and I totally agree, I think you're right, the government, to be fair to them, definitely trying to address a lot of those concerns raised by the Supreme Court. But one of the issues that sort of seems to be really sticking this morning is this kind of suggestion that we'll be taking a number of Rwandans here in the UK, and the government refusing to say exactly how many, saying a handful. Well, how many is a handful, and what's the point if this is reciprocal?
It's very low numbers, the Home Office says. Essentially, it's any asylum seekers who arrive here illegally by small boats, are taken to Rwanda for processing, and then are found to commit crimes that are subject to more than 5 years in prison. So all of those barriers, the Home Office hope, means it should be a very low number.
OK, Christopher Hope with that. Thank you very much indeed. Now, arguably, the biggest day in the COVID inquiry is about to start in around an hour's time. Boris Johnson is expected to admit that he made mistakes during the pandemic when he appears before the COVID inquiry later today. Well, he will, however, argue that his government got the big decisions right, and he'll also say he helped save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives by preventing the NHS from being overwhelmed. Well, let's cross live to GB News presenter Pip Thompson, who's there already for us. And Pip, if we thought you were early, you were beaten by Boris Johnson, who was there several hours ahead of most of the cameras.
Good morning, Isabel. Yes, he arrived at about 7 a.m, so a full 3 hours before he's due to face the inquiry and the forensic questioning of lead counsel Hugo Keith-Casey. It could be that he wanted to avoid some of the people that had been gathering outside. Let me just show you, because apart from the many media gathered, there are a lot of bereaved families here. They want to be here during the next 2 days to hear exactly what Boris Johnson has to say on so many issues, and no wonder this is going to take a full 2 days. Some of the key questions: his decision, his timing of lockdown. We heard from the former Health Secretary Matt Hancock last week, who said many, many lives could have been saved if lockdown had happened a full 3 weeks earlier. What about Boris Johnson's attitude? There's claims that it was callous and chaotic. And then, of course, the power of Dominic Cummings. Sajid Javid, the former Chancellor, said he was the one who held all the power. And also the toxic culture that allegedly existed at Number 10. Well, I've been speaking to some of the families. This is what they told me about why they want to be in the same room as Boris Johnson today.
People need to be accountable. These decisions led to the deaths of thousands of people who never should have died. If we'd have had a different government at the time that wasn't so callous and chaotic, thousands more people would have been alive.
And this is my dad, Brian Phillips, and unfortunately he was one of the victims of the second wave. So like Lynn's husband, no lessons were learnt in the first wave. And I'm here because I believe that Mr. Johnson's incompetent, He's incompetent to the degree that he employed people like Matt Hancock as a health secretary, who's clearly out of his depth. And I just really want to sit here and look him in the eye and see what he has to say.
I've got to be strong because our country needs answers to what happened. Potentially this could happen again, and thousands of people are still dying, and if we don't do something and stand together with this, it's going to ruin everything.
So some very strong feelings here this morning, Isabel, as indeed there are with people watching and listening at home. Boris Johnson is expected to apologise for some of the mistakes made in the early part of the pandemic, but also stress that he got a lot of the big decisions right, such as the vaccine rollout.
Pip, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. The time, 9 minutes, kind of 10 minutes past 9, Britain's newsroom in 20 minutes' time. Let's go to Andrew and Bev to see what's happening there.
There's going to be 3 people in this marriage this morning, isn't there? Me, you and Boris Johnson, exactly. I think, largely.
And the lawyer.
And the lawyer, yeah.
He'll be grandstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Boris is just, you know, he snuck in this morning, didn't he, to avoid
the families,
the crowd, the controversy.
To do his homework, do his notes.
And do his notes. It's kind of classic Boris, isn't he? Cramming at the last minute.
He has been talking to his lawyer. He's been locked away with his lawyer for days, actually.
Well, I think that's what's going to be really fascinating about this, because we all know that, you know, Boris Johnson has a very unique way of answering questions. He often sort of refers to Greek mythology and lots of boosterism and all the rest of it. But under the grilling, under the microscope of a barrister who will go through line by line, how will he respond to that when they will be requiring for evidence? And I think from what the Telegraph's reporting, and I know this will tickle you, Bev, is that he'll be saying back to the inquiry, actually, I think you should be looking about whether lockdown had harms in and of itself.
Oh, I hope he does.
And that's important, because the worry for me is, Isabel, that people look at the theatrics of it and the style of it and whether he is just Boris being boosterish Boris, or whether they actually get to the real issues. He was the Prime Minister during this pandemic. He ultimately took the decision to lock us down, not once, twice, and they've got to get to none of it. I fear they won't.
And actually, we learnt a lot more from the WhatsApp messages, courtesy of Isabel Oakeshott on the Daily Telegraph, than we'll ever learn from this COVID inquiry, in my opinion. The questions were answered is that Boris's instincts were to be more cautious with lockdown after lockdown, because he could see the long-term damage that was coming down the line that we're all experiencing now. And so I want to know why he changed his mind. Who encouraged him to... I mean, as Stanley Johnson said, there was a lot of pressure from the press, from the media. All of the, you know... The fear was heightened, the drama was heightened to an extent that we've never seen in our lifetimes or ever before. So, you know, I think I'm just concerned they're not going to ask the right questions.
What else have you got for us today?
We've just got a lot of that, really.
Yeah, a lot of that, but also we're talking about the biggest NHS strike by doctors. And I'm sorry, I'm terribly cynical about this. Starting just before Christmas, we've already seen in some of the papers the WhatsApp messages saying, great, we're going to get a longer Christmas holiday. Come on, this is so cynical.
The trouble
just
was,
before
I
Christmas.
thought Victoria Atkins was going to be a real doer, because she got in there and she sorted out the consultant straight away.
She did.
But apparently these talks have been more positive than all the previous ones. But the deadline was set before she came in.
Yeah.
So maybe there is some work still to be done here.
It's just
It's
terrible.
the wrong time of year to do it.
It's awful. The wrong time. Bank holidays are always bad for the NHS at the best of times. They should just reconsider this. This BMA has just become kamikaze.
Yeah, it is really bad. And we'll be also looking a little bit at Nigel Farage's performance in the jungle last night. Taking his shirt off.
We've seen it all now. We've seen his bum.
But we haven't seen quite everything, and that's quite enough.
Next?
I think we've gone far enough, haven't we? And Eamonn looking horrified. Yeah, I think we're going to see even more of Nigel Farage.
Guys, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. 30 minutes past the hour. Hope your day is going well. Stay with us. We're with you until 9:30, and then Bev and Andrew after that. And coming up...
Well, a big day for Boris, but also for Prince Harry. His legal case is also back in the High Court today. We'll be looking at that next.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Last night, didn't see I'm a Celebrity last night. I'm sorry I didn't see it because there was a lot to see, as it turns out. But
you were just stuck in a car for about 8 years.
We were stuck in a car for, nearly 4 hours because of the train strike. Not that we're moaning about that, it just was London...
Gridlock.
Traffic, oh, goodness me. Anyway, but meanwhile, in the jungle, Nigel Farage survived for the next round. And
if they say that sex doesn't sell, then they're lying, because he's been getting his kit off. Here's Adam Cherry with the latest.
Good morning, guys. Good afternoon from the Gold Coast here in sunny Australia. The big news overnight is, yes, Nigel Farage has survived another day in the jungle. So the Vote Remain campaign lives on for yet another day. Of course, that's not the only big news coming out of last night. We have to talk about this, and we are going to show you the clip. If you haven't seen it already, brace yourselves. This is Nigel singing I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt in the Jungle Arms last night. Take a look at this if you dare.
I'm too sexy for my love. Too sexy for my love. Love's going to leave me.
We were also given the delight of Nigel Farage. I'm too sexy for my shirt.
Sexy for my shirt. Too sexy for my shirt. So sexy it hurts. I do know the Fairbrass brothers that produced that hit. You know, I'm too sexy for my shirt. You've got to get your shirt off.
Vote for Nigel again tonight. Make sure you do. Hashtag Vote Remain. Back to you guys. Cheers.
Adam.
I just love Josie going, I loved it. He sang, I'm too sexy for my shirt. And I'm saying that as someone who dated someone with a Bristolian accent for 5 years, so I say that with love.
She's very authentic and very lovely, and I think could be, you know, down there the last three, and Sunday is the final. So Nigel's still in, Josie Gibson is still in. Who would you like to see winning King or Queen of the Jungle? And on that subject of royalty?
Oh, yes, well, the real king. He was joined by the Queen, Prince William and Princess Catherine last night for a dazzling Buckingham Palace reception, which traditionally heralds the start of the festive period for royals.
Very well they look too. Meanwhile, Prince Harry, that's not him, he's in High Court and he's challenging the Home Office. They ruled that his security protection should not be given while he visits the UK. He's saying, oh, no, it should be. But anyway, he is not a working royal. And on the programme, Rafe Hadel Mancu with his opinion on all of this.
Boils down to essentially Prince Harry believing that he's entitled to all of the perks and privileges of royalty without any of the obligations and responsibility. It's also actually worth pointing out that this is Prince Harry taking his father's government to court, and that's completely without precedent. We've never seen a royal do anything like this. Now, of course, Prince Harry is alleging that he's been treated unfairly, as you said, that he's been singled out, but the Home Office is quite clear and refutes that and says, you know, you are no longer a member of the working royal family, and therefore your security status must be downgraded. He alleges there are members of the royal household who are sitting on the committee that revoked his security status, but they say, well, this would have happened whoever was sitting on the committee, and it seems quite clear, actually, that the...
But could I just ask you a question? Prince Andrew, right? So he's not a working royal now. Does he have a security detail?
No, so his security has been stripped from him as well.
Oh,
so
but he's not complaining.
And he is also complaining about it, but not quite so vocally and vociferously. He's having discussions behind closed doors about this too. But certainly, you know, but it's not really an issue for the king. This is a matter, as always, for the Metropolitan Police and for the committee to look at. It's a matter of operational issues, and essentially they've said, look, you are actually getting royal protection. You're getting a bespoke level of royal protection. Like any dignitary who comes, we will view each visit on its own merits, and you'll get the right level of security appropriate to that visit. Just as, if you may remember, during the coronation, we waited for weeks, if not months, for Harry to say whether he was coming or not.
Yes,
and one of the reasons we heard was because he didn't think that the security would be sufficient for him. But it was fine for the President of France. They made no complaints about that. The First Lady of America didn't have any problems with security.
Well, they would have
for
had
some
the
reason,
same
Harry,
level.
yes, for some reason, Harry thinks that he's a special case. And he has to realise, of course, that he's no longer as important as he once was. He's suffering from that problem.
Once a royal, always a royal.
Well, he's suffering from that problem of younger brothers being second in line to the throne at one point. Now he's fifth in line to the throne. He's not that important. If he wants to have royal protection, he could easily hire former royal protection officers who no longer serve in the Metropolitan Police, either as part of his own security detail or as consultants to train his American team. They won't have guns, but apart from that, they'll be every bit as well equipped.
Go.
Does our Christmas tree give you any ideas about decorating your own? No, I thought not. But it was just...
I thought you'd have liked it. You like bright colours on your tree.
Yeah, but I don't like those.
You
anyway.
don't like them?
No.
Oh.
I'd do anything, but I won't do that. No,
well,
GBViews to GBNews.com.
I'm too sexy for my shirt.
You didn't come in to see my tree last night.
I didn't.
With my twinkly lights that can go any colour you want. They can strobe, they can flash, they can be static.
And you're passing judgment on that tree?
Yeah, but my colours are gorgeous.
I remember last Christmas you had some little gadgets in front of the fire that were all electric. Yeah, Ruth and I were rolling eyes at each other about those. Because you said you were allowed 2 decorations in the house. She let you have those 2.
Yeah, funny.
Right.
My salt and pepper pots are
the only contribution in the kitchen, the salt and pepper pots. Quite right.
But the twinkly tree, which you can work as an app from your phone.
Well, that's very cool.
It's very cool.
But
and
not
it's
a
great
real
just
tree.
to go. And I can now coordinate the tree with the wreath over the fire.
Oh,
so,
garland.
So your tree, say your tree's red and white lights, well, so can your wreath over the fireplace.
Technology.
Be like that as well. Yeah, it's really nice. It can flash, it can strobe, it can coordinate.
Do you know what I'm thinking of investing in this year for the first time? Light up deer on the lawn. Nice or naff?
No, I've had them. Matter of fact, I had a deer that finally had it so long it collapsed, the frame rusted and it broke. But I think it can look very, very good, especially get a moving one that its head was up and down.
That's naff.
Our heads will be up and down tomorrow from 6. See you then.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It'll be a dry and bright day for many of us, but it still feel rather cold after the chilly start. But later on, we'll see some rain arriving in the west. Now, there's an ice warning in force still through the morning across northeastern areas of Scotland. And elsewhere, though, we'll see plenty of dry and clear weather through much of the day. Any freezing fog should slowly lift and clear further south and west, but the sunshine will start to turn a little bit hazier across western parts of the UK, and rain will arrive into Northern Ireland. Temperatures will start to rise, though, highs of 12 degrees in the Scilly Isles later, still feeling very cold in the east, however, despite the sunshine. And then that rain through tonight will push further east. We've got weather warnings in force for parts of Northern Ireland overnight, and then tomorrow morning into parts of the southwest of the UK. That could bring some hill snow to parts of the Pennines and Scotland for a time, but mostly we'll be seeing a lot of heavy rain. Temperatures as a result will slowly start to rise, so there's much less of a risk of a frost through tonight. And then through Thursday, the rain really does continue, so quite a damp, cloudy day, and with weather warnings in force through much of the day across parts of Scotland and these western areas. Many of us will see rain on and off throughout the day. There could be water lingering on the roads as well, so do take care if you're travelling throughout Thursday. Later on, though, in the west, we will see the sunshine return and temperatures rising into double digits for many of us. I'll see you later.
Morning.
Good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom.
The big one, isn't it?
It is
today?
the big one. Boris Johnson at the COVID inquiry, but I don't know about you, but I don't have a huge amount of faith they're going to ask the right questions.
Well, they won't. Apparently, he wants to talk about the origin of COVID. Did it start in a laboratory?
Good.
But he won't be allowed to because it's beyond the terms of reference. He's